G'day, beautiful people. Welcome once again to your Monday evening or your Tuesday afternoon, wherever you are in the world. It's time to talk some war dollies. Bar weep, grana weep, mini bong. Cheers. Lovely to have you with us. And welcome to an Aussie Abroad. We're talking about war dollies again, just like we do every week. And isn't that fucking great? Now, joining me today, I have the fantastic TO extraordinaire, Andy. Mr. Andy Selwood, the proprietor of the West Coast GT proprietor, might not be the right word, I don't know, I'm just waxing lyrical. Andy, how you doing, mate?
I'm fantastic, Dan. It's Monday, but it's been a really good Monday,
Mm-hmm.
and so happy that you got me on the show
Well, that's
again.
because we're talking about some stuff. Well, we're actually talking about two different things today. And it just so happens that you kind of sit across both. So it's wonderful. It just fits. G'day, Jimmy, 1080, 100 better than Jimmy, 980. Blaze be mad. Tomb King Tristan, I don't know how long we're going to be able to have you for this evening before you toddle off to sleep, but it's wonderful to see you. Yes, I am Flamingo Dan this evening. Beautiful, beautiful man, budtastic guy. We're all beautiful humans because we play war dollies, even though sometimes it gets the better of us and we get hyper competitive, which we are all guilty of sometimes. LLV saying I'm looking swish, mate. You can't see me from the waist down. So let's just make sure that we're all sitting there. Digital Keegan, wonderful to see you. Now, if you are joining us live, we're taking questions in the chat on Twitch, so you can find us there. But whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, wherever you are, thank you so much. And the other thing that I do want to put out there is earlier this week, there was a GoFundMe to get some better cameras, better coverage, all of that stuff. And like in 24 hours, it was smashed. I know Rob was pretty taken aback. He and I were messaging the whole time, just being like, what the fuck is going on? So I guess anyone who helped out in any way, even if you couldn't give $1 and you just like shared it or commented or liked or helped get a word out there, where it's kind of one of the things we're just really passionate about, bringing the best events coverage we can. So now we can. It's going to look sexy. I'm not sure, actually, I'm not going to say when the first outing of that tech's going to be. So I won't reveal anything there, but just a huge thank you to the community. You're all wonderful people. And I hope you're all treating yourself to a drink. Andy, what are we drinking over where you are?
I'm having some Jameson,
Mm-hmm.
which is a good standby whiskey. I find my dad used to drink this stuff, and yeah, it's I think it's a good one for the
Yeah,
Monday.
look, I love a good Jameson. The only thing that horrifies me is that you people here then seem to follow it with a pickle juice chaser and call it a pickleback. And that just, for me, ruins the delicious, delicious flavour of the Jameson, but fair enough. Um, LLV, people chasing a stats show. The stats are obviously real, and people want to make it 4,000. But if people just move on from Tomb Kings. Tomb King Tristan, I'd be careful. He is a moderator, so you don't want to mess with him because he could kick you from the chat. Um, so yeah, it's a dangerous comment. I'm knocking back a little bit of spiced rum. I've actually got my stuff, got my bottle, got my bitters, got a little bit of agave and an orange and a peeler. So I'll be making myself spiced rum old fashions all night. That's what I'm going to be drinking because I'm just leveling up my alcoholism game slightly, just by a little bit, just by a bee's dick. Um, Tomb King Tristan wielding his power horrifyingly in the chat. Now, Andy, I'm so sorry to bring you on and then ask you to just wait because I want to talk about TO stuff. I want to talk about events and I want to talk about Forbidden Power and the new battle plans. But before we do, I actually have something to talk to the chat about and our viewers at home. And that's that last week, as you can see, I got all this empty space on the back wall. And I asked the chat if they wouldn't mind doing some art to help me fill that. And just like a good Saturday morning cartoon show, I'd like to show off some of our viewers' art that got sent in. Now, this first one is from a young man named Elfbro. His name is Hayden. And he drew me this lovely picture of... so this is Ravnak Snashing Jaws. Now, Andy, I want you to imagine Microsoft Paint. And it's a drawing in Microsoft Paint. Now imagine Ravenak's jaws if it had flesh on the front and a shark's fin and then little happy eyes. So the thing I really like about this picture is that it looks like it's having so much fun. Like you can just see the joy in it, really. And it's got a sense of motion to it as well, with the little blue wavy lines out the back. And just in general, I like the rustic appeal of some paint artwork. Andy, not having seen what I'm talking about, I'd like you to review this piece out of 10 for me. Just
Well,
by verbal
just
description
based
alone.
on the description, I think it sounds like a solid seven.
A solid 7. Okay, there we go,
Um,
Elf Bro. Actually, we'll mark that down on all of the art. So that's a 7.
how old is he?
Look, I'm going to say early to mid 20s.
Okay.
That's not too bad. All right, so we're saying. Sorry, I get my Sharpie so we can actually see it. Is that a scale out of 10 or out of more than 10, Andy? 7 out of.
That's out of 10.
It's out of 10.
That's 7 out of 10. Yeah.
7 out of 10.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so we've got
A really good effort for somebody in their 20s.
So that's a 7 out of 10 right there. LLV chiming in and saying that it looks like one of those rockets from Super Mario 4. Yep. All right, so that's the first one. That's Elf Bro. Now the next, we'll put that on the wall. We'll put that up there so that we've got some more art. There we are. Lovely. There we go. Just pop that up there. Now the next one that we have, this one's actually from Northern Invasion, and it's actually remarkable. Now it's a pencil sketch of a Stormcast. It's real good. Like, I'm not gonna lie, this thing's great. There's like multiple levels of shading. There's like a hint of blue in the eye. You can see it's like a close-up headshot of a Stormcast. Like if a Stormcast was going to try and start an acting career, I imagine this is the photo that he would use. And there's just that little hint of like ethereal sadness in the eyes. So I really do like that one. Andy, your vote out of 10 on that one for me?
Well, because it's Stormcast, I think a 6.
It's 6, okay. It's only a 6 because it's a Stormcast. All right, well, 6 out of 10 for that one. I got to say, I'm really liking forcing someone who can't see the things that I'm talking about to review them and score them out of 10. This is definitely how it's going to go down every week from now on. So send them to me on Twitter or on Facebook or anywhere, and we'll put those up right there. There we go. There's our lovely little Stormcast bloke. And the last one, also from Northern Invasion. Now, we have a grot here. I believe it's a grot shaman, and it's a Gitmob grot as well, which we can tell by the fact that it's not any of the other types of grots. And the thing that just speaks to me on an emotional level is that you can see in his eyes the rage at how much the Gloomspite Git's got, but how little that he ended up getting being a little Gitmob fella. So Andy, just out of 10, what are we giving old mate Gitmob grot without you having seen it at all?
Oh, I've got a soft spot for those grots, so
yeah.
So I would say an 8.
An 8. All right, sweet. So an 8 out of 10 there. An 8 out of 10 for the grot. So coming in today, it was a close run. We had an 8, a 6, and a 7. But the Gitmob grot, obviously the art critic favorite for today. So snaps for Northern Invasion, everybody, in the chat. Being asked if anyone sent me a dick butt. No one sent me a dick butt. However, to qualify, they must be hand-drawn, whether that's in paint or sketched or whatever. That's what it will require for it to happen. There's I want to talk today about a number of things. The first thing I just quickly want to flag before we move on is that this segment, obviously, with all of the art and things like that, it needed a name of some description. And I was racking my brain. I was like, what's a good name for this little segment? Every week, I'll show off a couple of pieces of art that I've been sent in. And I'll just, we'll get some reviews on them. We'll make this a bit of an art show that's already about drinking. Yep, Jimmy 1080, some good looking art right there. Look at all this art. Whew, baby. But this section about the art needed a name. And I was thinking, what about something like nice, unique drawings everyone scribbled? But then I was like, that's way too long. That's not you can't really do that. So I thought, what about if we just shortened that to the first letter of each of those words and we called it send nudes? So this section is going to be called Send Nudes. Send nice, unique drawings everyone scribbled, and we can all just enjoy it, and we'll have a great time. We'll learn something about art. We'll learn something about ourselves, and it'll be great. It'll be awesome. Blaze Be Mad already tweeting a drawing. I just saw my phone light up with a Twitter notification, so I'm assuming that's you. And as terrified as I am of what will potentially follow, that's where we're going to go. The other hot news coming out, which I didn't actually get time to deal with last week, that I just super quickly want to flag, is that Scrivo survived Bobo. He turned up to both days. Previously, he got so drunk that he couldn't turn up to push buttons and run the whole show on the Sundays, so we had to pull it together with Adam, which is really hard. Credit to Scrivo for being amazing. So congratulations, Scrivo, for kicking that and not getting absolutely shit mixed hammered. Jace Fest did not see that one coming. Well, I'm glad that I could bring you some art. All right, so now for what we're here for what we're here to talk about. Andy, the reason we're here, we're obviously going to, first of all, we'd like to talk a little bit about Korn. Because Korn's been, their book came out, and there was a lot of hoodoo about the endless prayers. People were concerned about the endless prayers. I'd say myself as well. I didn't like the idea that it's effectively an endless spell that you can't dispel, and you can get a reroll to get it up, and then your opponent can't control them. Now, you've used a few of them, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, I've primarily used the Hexgorger skulls. They're kind of an auto-include, I think. And I have used the Wrath Axe and to fire the points for that. Yeah, the skulls definitely done a number of things, actually. You know, they're not just you know, giving a -2 card, but they're also they can get in the way. And so I had a game actively blocked off the flank of one of my units, so it couldn't be sort of hit in the side, or it you know, a charge in the side was not as effective as it could have been.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that for me has definitely been huge. Seeing those endless spells when people are using them with, like, especially the ones with a bigger base, it's not using them about damaging, just using them to position and block off area. It's fucking spectacular. So yeah, I rate them for that. Like, they're not only really, I like as well that the skulls they're not about just punching the damage out there. They're kind of tactical. They're about denial, both area and magic. So yeah, I really like them. I rate them a lot. Just jumping in the chat. Elf Bro just joined the chat. Mate, you just missed our review of your wonderful piece of art. Let me flick back just to the previous screen just for a moment so that you can see it on the wall. There we go. So it is up there. I went through it in detail, so you might have to watch back. Went through it, and Andy, my co-host for today, who could only judge the art that I've been sent based off of my description of it, gave you a 7 out of 10. That's a 7 out of 10 there, Hayden. Congratulations. Very lovely. And awesome job. So speaking of like chatting Korn and things like that, obviously the thing that we want to look at is like lists and stuff and where they've gone, because previously, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you pretty much just saw big blocks of 30 bloodletters and the Gore Pilgrims. Like, was there really much else that you saw a lot of out of Korn, Andy?
Not really, no. I mean, there you know, there used to be the list with the 3 bloodthirsters.
Yeah, the Council of Blood.
But yeah, that was 2. But you know, with lots of skull crushers and things.
But ultimately, it was the same kind of 3 lists all the time, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So we finally found ourselves in a position where we're getting some new stuff coming out, and different War Scroll battalions, use of endless prayers, different units. So I asked you what list you were running and what the kind of things you've been putting together, because the reason I wanted to have this conversation is I saw a game that you were playing at a club day last weekend, and you were effectively shutting down Nagash and an entire legion of Nagash's magic phase. So this I'm just showing popped up on the screen, everyone, the army, the list that you've been building and working with. Um, so talk me through it. Talk me through this list. So it's Khorne, it's Reapers of Vengeance, which just for fun, like I don't really understand calling like they reap vengeance. Like they I don't understand. Like they would reap cotton or something like that. They go out and they just find things that need avenging, and then they reap that. That sounds like a very Stormcast thing, but you know it sounds badass, which fits them. Um, so yeah, talk me through your list.
Yeah, no problem. Now, I guess what I should say is that this list, the idea for it came from a list that I saw somebody use in a tournament in England. But so I've owned a Bloodthirster of Unfettered Fury for several years, and every time I mention to people I've got that particular Bloodthirster, they're all like, "Oh yeah, that's the worst one." You
Right.
know, so it's sat on my shelf.
That's the one that
It's sat on
nobody
my
uses.
shelf being Thirster, and you know, I've been kind of salty about that for a long time. And then all of a sudden, I saw this list, and it made sense to me. So basically, you take Reapers of Vengeance so that you can a couple of things happening with the Bloodthirster. So you can have which is really cool. And you can take the Leave None Alive as well. And so combined with the Crimson Crown, so what this means is that you can park your Bloodthirster just within 6 inches an enemy unit,
Yeah.
and you can, you know, for free with the Crimson Crown, just basically activate the pile in 6 inches. With the Leave None Alive, you can pop a command point and then act twice. And you know,
Christ.
what's really cool about it is obviously you can.
Oh, of course,
You
because you're
could,
piling in from 6. You could use an auto run 6, whip him with the Bloodstoker, come in from 6 inches outside because you don't need to make a charge roll, right?
you can't use the Bloodstoker because the Bloodstoker is only for mortal
Oh, of course.
form
Yeah,
units
and
now.
let's be honest, that would be kind of weird if he could whip a Bloodthirster and be like, mush! And then it just goes like, oh, yes, certainly. As opposed to Slanesh, who I think would be like, oh, harder, daddy. But yeah, it's obviously a pretty badass kind of anti-magic list as well. So it's got the punch coming in from like a big. Look at that 60 wound block of Blood Warriors. That's a combination of like durability, I guess, because of the save, but then the potential for they got a pretty good potential for damage. They're better than they used to be. But you've got a big old anvil in the Blood Warriors. You've got some chaff in the Blood Reavers. But I'm guessing that this list kind of relies on the Skull Reapers and the Bloodthirster to do the damage.
Yeah, pretty much. What I do is, you know, and the reason why I'm practicing this list a lot is because there's so many bubbles that you have to stay within. You know, so the Blood Secretor. So you know, if you want to get the +1 attack, you have to be wholly within 60 inches of him. Is, you know, so what I normally do is I set up, say, one of the Skull Reaper units, Monger unit, kind of like basically nuts to butts, right behind it. And if I can get the Blood Secretor to be inside, if they're inside the bubble of the Blood Secretor, then you know those Reapers can be on like six attacks each,
And they don't need
and
like it with their potential for mortal wounds or even just like all of their rerolls as they get kills and things like that. They don't need a lot to go through something like a hot knife through butter, do they?
no, and I find, you know, if you like a 20 man unit, it may have been Grimghast, I don't know, but
Yeah.
re-roll all your hits. So, you know, potentially you're rolling like 30 dice re-rolling all the fails, so you can get, you know, sixes maybe, you
Yeah,
know, and
and you're grinding
so
through
that's and then
whatever it is as well. Like coming back there, they got 3 wounds a pop, 4 wounds each. Three?
three wounds each, and when they die, they have the potential to do mortal wounds back.
Yeah, no, they're not going
Um,
anywhere fast, and I think it's a bit like paladins and evocators in Stormcast, right? Because you've got a unit that might only be 5 models, but it's 15 wounds, which is, and it's the same reason that sometimes I would lean towards Gore Grunters over Brutes, because Gore Grunters, you take 9 wounds and you've only lost 1 Gore Grunter. The unit's still at 2/3 capacity. Whereas if you take 9 wounds on a unit of Brutes, there's only 2 Brutes left. So yeah, I see Skull Reapers as useful. I like the change. I won't lie. I like the change to Skull Reapers and Wrathmongers. People were crying that they got nerfed. All I think that they did was they balanced a very silly rule that they had. Were you particularly upset to see their "fuck you, nah you fuck you, nah you fuck you" rule go away when they kind of got the new book?
you know, initially I was like, oh man, 8 inches for the +1 attack, but then I realized, well, you know, they're only buffing Corn now, and you know, when they die, they're doing mortal wounds.
Yeah,
You know, quite often they can end up doing like D3 mortal wounds.
yeah, they're not a unit to. They're no longer are they the unit that'll make Nagash one shot himself, but they're I think a bit more universally terrifying now. Like you can't just like previously I didn't care if I threw a unit of dwarf warriors or a combat unit into them because I'm like, yeah, if I hit myself, I'm not doing anything. Knowing that killing them's going to probably be slinging mortal wounds back my way, I'm a lot more concerned about getting stuck into them.
Yeah, and then I guess so the other features of the list, I mean, as you mentioned, it's got good magic protection.
It's just
You know,
it's not magic protection. You have an anti-magic offensive army. Um, yeah, like Jakers. It's not happy, is it, with people trying to cast spells?
either they can end up, you know, taking mortal wounds, and then if they're wholly within, sorry, not wholly, if they're within 12 inches of both of the Hexgorga skulls, then they might end up taking mortal wounds.
Okay, so wait, talk me through. Okay, so what you've only really got one unbind in the army?
Two.
Two, sorry, two unbinds. So
The Solar Priest and
there's two unbinds. However, there's the Bloodsecrator who makes you reroll successful castings, correct?
yeah.
Yep. And then there's Mage Eater on the General. What does that one do again?
So if you roll an 8 to unbind, they take mortal wounds. I'm just checking what
I think it's if you unbind and roll an unmodified 8, you cop D3 mortal wounds. Correct me if I'm wrong.
D6.
D6. Fuck Island. Okay. D6 mortal wounds. So if the Bloodthirster, which is fucking awesome, right? Because you see your opponent who just, like, they roll it and they hit an 11, and you're like, ah, well, you know what? I'm probably not going to get a shot at that. 9 times out of 10, you're going to force them to re-roll it using the Bloodsecrator. And then when you're like, oh, okay, you only cast it on a 6, I'm going to try and unbind that. But then the combo, for those who aren't aware of the Hexgora skulls, or Gorgeous skulls, or however the hell it's pronounced, that they also punish you for casting spells.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, I just kind of like how it works. And, you know, if I can get, say, 3 Blood Tithe points, then I can bring on some Flesh Hounds as well. And then I've got another Unbind. So, yeah. And then I guess the other feature of the list is yesterday and Deepkin, and I was worried about a big unit of eels coming in, punching me from, you know, from deep strike or whatever. And
from the aqua, the eels popping up and just shit mixing you in the back line.
Yeah, but what I found is that I've got the bodies with the 3 units of 10 Blood Reavers. Sorry, I've got the bodies to kind of zone out my backfield if I need to.
Mm. Mm.
And the I mean the Dark Feast Battalion. Initially, I took that. I was like, well, that's it's a cheap formation, but the Blood Reavers are within 16 of the Slaughter Priest.
Yeah, they're
Then they get
becoming a lot better. They're a much better bet, right?
yeah, they get +1 attack, and then if they're
Mm.
wholly within 16 of the Blood Secretor, 2 extra attacks, so then they're
Mm.
on 4 attacks each.
And suddenly
And
like a unit of 10 with axes, like a unit of 10 by themselves, they're pretty much just chaff, right? The unit of 10 with axes inside of that range, popping 4 attacks each, your opponent's kind of got to stop and be like, well, I can't order my combats the way I want to because that unit of chaff is now a unit of fuck you that potentially could carve through units that aren't ready for it. And for me, like that's the
yeah,
biggest thing in the game, right? I love I've always said my two favorite things about Age of Sigmar is the priority roll and the back and forth of combat. And so it's kind of fun that you've got a list that can give someone what they think is a safe bet in going into the combat and then be like, hey, just so you know, those 10 guys are popping out 40 attacks. And suddenly that unit of 20 clan rats or something, or even 40 plague monks has to think about whether they want to give you the chance. Though plague monks will fuck you up as they die as well, so it's kind of a mixed blessing. Nemesis, it's probably just Nemesis, but for some reason I like to add the extra ones. He said that the last time he played Khorne, he only got one spell off, but it was because his Grey Seer rolled a 13 with his Warp Stone, which means he automatically gets the spell and then blows his head off, which is always fun. And it's a very Skaven way to go as well, blowing your head off with it. So just going back through the chat, people talking about Ironjaw's going 4-1. Yeah, War stacking the Infinity War. There were Bloodtooth's got 4-1. Okay, that's not bad. That's doing all right. Dr. Vulcan, thanks for the 100 bits. I'll put it towards I don't know something. Techie shit. We always need cables. We have so much great goddamn need for cables. But I guess the thing I want to kind of ask Andy, given that you played Khorne before the new book, you're playing Khorne now. How are you finding the play style? Because I know that I don't know if it's the same here, but in Australia, Khorne was getting a bit of a verbal kicking from a lot of people because it was seen as a bit easy. Maybe might be the right way to put it, or you always saw one of the same 3 builds. It was either doubling down like 2 units of 30 bloodletters and some other stuff, or like 2 units of 30 bloodletters and a Gore Pilgrims, or a Council of Blood and a Gore Pilgrims. Like we mostly saw Gore Pilgrims just about left, right, and center. And Australia very much kind of shit on Khorne because of that. Have you noticed a change from like previous book to now with people's attitudes towards playing your Khorne?
Yeah, definitely. What I'm hearing from people that I play is that they have a lot of fun playing against my army, and I kind of feel like this list and a lot of the lists I've tried out, have been sort of strong but not kind of
Yeah,
broken.
and looking at that list, right, I see a really cool toolbox. I see a very anti-magic heavy list, which I fucking love because I'd love to play with my dispossessed and be like, fuck you, magic, I don't need. But I also like you've got units for screens, but they're chaff that can suddenly become super chaff with that blood secretor. You've got a good punch from the leader, but then decent punch from multiple units and an anvil in there as well, which I think a lot of armies don't have an anvil backing them up. So yeah, I dig it. I like it as a list. My favorite thing is just how much it can. It's an offensive anti-magic list. It's not I would say for dispossessed, they're a defensive anti-magic list, right? Like they stop magic by being defensive and shutting you down. Yours not only shuts down your opponent's magic phase, it then hurts them in their magic phase, in their hero phase. And I think that's kind of cool because if you come up against an army that's relying on a few of those spells, you're going to make them ask themselves, do I really need to cast this? Can I risk taking D6, D3 mortal wounds for failing to cast or being unbound? I think it's fucking awesome. Any last thoughts on the list? Any last things you want to leave us with before we start talking about some of the other stuff that came out this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would say is that, and I think why maybe Corn is, maybe not getting such the sort of hate is that, now you just have to be so careful about your being wholly within, like so easy when you get a good charge roll to be like, oh, I'll push those Skull Reapers up as far as I can. And then after you've done that, you realize that now you've pushed them of your Blood Secretor and you're not getting +1 attack anymore.
So are you saying that as a Corn player, you're starting to have to think tactically instead of just throwing units forward willy-nilly?
Exactly.
Yeah, right. And I mean, that must be a brand new thing for you, right? Corn players, my experience was them throwing 30 bloodletters at me turn one, deleting a chunk of my army. I kill those 30 bloodletters. They throw another 30 bloodletters at me turn two, slingshot them across the board. Then I got to deal with them. So you're telling me that now you actually have to think about strategy and overlapping buffs and a strong battle line. Is that it?
That's pretty much it. Yeah. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, for example, like when I Stoker, you have to be wholly within 8 inches of him uh, to get his Whip to Fury. So, if I'm trying to do it on the Blood Warriors, I pretty much have to think about how far I can get the Blood Stoker, and then maybe not move the Blood Warriors so far that they're going to be
So that they're
outside of
going to.
his.
Well, 30, 32-inch bases is a big footprint as well. Speaking of which, actually, Alex, Vanir just says, I'm never going to get that right. I'm terrible at names. I can't even remember people's names at work. He asks, how do you find having 30 Blood Warriors in a single squad?
I love it.
Okay, but here's my question, right? Does that become a little bit troublesome? Because if someone tags them like in a flank with a charge, that's got to put the pain on them when they can't get around to actually fight it properly.
Um, I think what the important thing is that I try to get them to where I want them to be. So if I can get them on an objective place where my opponent still has to sort of contend with them, care if I'm getting tagged from the flank. Tagged in the flank, I've got the Skull Reapers and the Bloodthirster
Yeah, I guess that's it.
to
It's because it's a
hit
toolbox.
and hit.
You've got so many threats that your opponent has to think about. And I guess the thing that I like is that you've got a few units of chaff there as well, so you can screen your flanks and make sure it's not going to happen. But I like what the thing that you've said there that I actually find a lot of dispossessed players don't do is you were asked how do you find having 30 blood warriors in a squad. You didn't talk about how many you had. You didn't talk about how many attacks or how much damage they did or how cheap it was, whether you got a discount for the horde bonus. You spoke about how you keep them in a safe place. And and this is something that I've spoken about with a number of players who play dispossessed, right? 40 dwarf warriors is 260 points. It's a huge discount. It's so cheap for 40 wounds. They've got a rerollable 5-up armor saving combat if they didn't run or charge. They can ignore magic on a 5-up. They halve the amount of models that run from Battle Shock. They're fucking amazing. However, 40 of them is really easy to tag out of line. So often I see people with a dispossessed army who only go maybe 2 wins out of a tournament because they've invested so many points in big blocks of units. And the danger with a big block of models is that they're really easy to kind of force their position on the battlefield. And I think that's the danger with 30, but you've got to screen them and you've got to be planning for where they're going to go. Have you found the footprint to be a liability at any point?
Oh, say that, yeah, not really. I mean, what I've tried to do with them is, I'm because of the Bloodstoker is usually like their companion. I'm sort of early on in the game get them up to like snag an objective or get within threat range of something of my opponent's, um, I haven't found that my opponent tag them really. Maybe I've just been lucky so far, but
Yeah.
maybe that's something that will be tried against me. I don't know, but I think that people see them not as a threat. They're looking more at the Bloodthirster and the Skull Reapers as a threats to kind of deal with.
Well, I mean, and I guess
So
that's the thing. They're so busy concerned with the damage output of the Skull Reapers or the potential for the Bloodthirster to just shit mix half their fucking army that the 30 Blood Warriors, it's like, you know what? I've got bigger shit to deal with right now. Let's just put one thing down at a time, and I will pick up the other shit later. And which is it, and that's the beauty of a toolbox list. That's why I always talk about lists as one of two different types. You've got toolbox lists, or you've got win condition lists. And that I know that's a win condition is kind of a borrowed term from Magic the Gathering for anyone who ever played that, which talks about like a deck that wins with a specific combo, and usually the entire deck will be tooled around getting that combo off. And if you can shut it down, you can effectively neuter that disc before it's had a chance to procreate. That's a fun little animal husbandry fact for you. How I know things about animal husbandry, I'll never know. But I guess the thing with a lot of these is you look at it, and corn lists previously felt like win condition lists. They were ones that they had one thing and an entire army based around getting that one thing off. So I really, really like seeing a list that's a bit more toolboxy, because for me, they're much more interesting games of war dollies. It's a toolbox list is a list built around asking a number of different questions and having a number of different answers. And for me, they make for really interesting games, because your opponent goes like, okay, this is the question I'm going to ask. And you're like, okay, well, this is my answer. And you kind of go back and forward until someone makes a mistake or someone doesn't have an answer for something. And I think it's a much more interesting game of war dollies. And in the long run, probably better to do. Have like you found that with this list? Because for me, this list looks like it has answers for a lot of different elements of the game.
yeah, I mean, what I've found so far is that the games that I've lost have been very close and have come down at turn 5.
Yeah.
And so, I'm totally happy to lose under those conditions.
Yeah, it's a turn 5 army. It's not an army that wins turn 1, and that's one of the things I remember like talking to Sylvaneth players about back home in Australia. I remember speaking to a number of them, and they talk about their first turn and their second turn, and that was the penultimate thing to them, right? Like it was like turn 1 into turn 2 was the make or break moment for their army. And I was talking to them with my dispossessed. My dispossessed, I was like, man, my army's fucking make or break is in turn 4 into turn 5 or 3 into 4. And for me, that's a more that list has more longevity in the game. And when I say that, I am specifically talking about competitive play and tournament play. I think that sometimes people are like, oh yeah, but what about this? I'm like, that's cool, but that's a different style. I'm just mostly talking competitive. Sorry, chat, I've been ignoring you for a while. We got caught up there for a moment. A few people joining us who it's just lovely to fucking see you. Hello. I just want to go back a little while. People not loving Blood Boil. Andy, your thoughts? Blood Boil being a piece of shit.
Yeah, that normally gets people kind of mad at me
Yeah, yeah. It
when I
upsets
say
me.
I'm gonna.
It fucking upsets me that you get a fucking D6 mortal wounds on a re-rollable 4 up. That's not okay.
Yeah, and when you roll that 6, the boil, and your opponent's like, what?
And your opponent's standing there looking at their 5 wound hero that you just took off the board with one roll of a 4 up. Yeah, no, definitely. Tim King Tristan, I've probably missed you. Have a wonderful evening. Sleep well. Dimensional Cascade joining us. G'day, Ricky. Lovely to fucking see you. I hope people have been hitting you up about those mats. If you haven't, ladies and gentlemen at home, Dimensional Cascade Ricky makes some of the best gaming mats I've ever goddamn seen. And like, he hasn't given me any freebies. There's no like little secret partnership going on. I played on one and it was fucking spectacular. Like the first time I played with scenery dice is how I compare it. It's the objectives are marked out. He knows his shit. He's very good at what he does. Give him a follow on Instagram or Twitch as well. check out the stuff that they produce. It's really cool. But those gaming mats are just something else. Timothy Tristan's probably already gone. Cool Bunny, lovely to see you in the chat, Veronica. Sorry I got your name wrong last week, but I'm shithouse with names. Dad Hammer joining us. It's good to see you again. Just trying to keep track of everything. Goddamn, I missed so much of the chat. I am so sorry. I missed so much. I got caught up there for a little while. But it's lovely to see you. If you have missed the opening of the show, all of this art that you see on the wall over here is art that was sent in since last week's show. Sorry, let me go a slightly better shot there. This is all art that's been sent in since last week's show, just showing you some of the fantastic stylings. Our art reviewer on the line, Andy, had to review each piece of art based only on my description of it, which were pretty shit house. So we've got a 7 out of 10 for the Ravnak Snashing Jaws Shark. We've got a 6 out of 10 for the Stormcast Tinder profile picture, and an 8 out of 10 for the Gitmob Grot Shaman. Congratulations to everyone who's featured on the art wall. And the way I see it, I'm just going to keep putting art up until there's nothing left to see, because this already feels more comfortable to me. It doesn't feel like blank walls, and I'm really enjoying it. Hypno Kraken jumping it. Yeah, it's pretty and Cool Bunny, definitely. I would look at the mats, because if nothing else, they make gaming so easy. It's one of those things like, Andy, I don't know if you've ever like been fucking around with scenery or trying to remember the numbers on scenery pieces and stuff. But the first time I played with scenery dice, and I was like, oh, I roll a dice, it says arcane, I put it next to the terrain piece, I know it's arcane. I was like, that's really clever. Then at your event at Wet Coast GT, when I got to play on the stream table, which had one of these mats on it, which had the objectives marked out, I was like, holy shit, how hasn't the world done that yet? Because it made life so much easier, and everything was like really easy to play, because when you moved onto an objective, you're like, oh, that's the 6-inch mark. We're not sitting here arguing over whether a model's in range, because I can see from the table where the marks are on the mat. Anyway, Ricky, mate, I know that I've been singing your praises. I hope you don't feel awkward about compliments, because what you did is you threaded the needle of all of us stupid people who love war dollies but don't understand complex equations or like design, and you just freaking nailed it. So congratulations, everyone, check them out. Get one of those mats. You should own one. Now, Andy, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about today, and the other reason that we're here and the other reason we're chatting, is because the Forbidden Power has obviously recently come out. And now Forbidden Power's added a number of different things. There's like a lot of narrative stuff to it. And can we just take a moment to appreciate how cool the narrative is of Age of Sigmar? Did you play Warhammer Fantasy much, Andy?
Yeah, I did. I started playing Fantasy in 3rd edition, in like around 1990, 91. I sort of stopped playing in university, picked it up again around like 6th edition.
Yeah.
And played right till the end of when it switched to Age of Sigmar.
So, like, it kind of got brought up into it. And I guess my question here is going more along the lines of the lore and the fiction, because I'm not going to tell a lie. I fucking love the world that was. I'm devastated that it's gone and so many of those characters I knew and love are dead. But I found the story of the world stagnant. Like, you couldn't change it. You couldn't kill off Karl Franz or Thorgrim Grudgebearer because they had models in production and rules. So you couldn't advance the story of any of those stuff. Whenever they advanced stories, it was like minor little pushes here or there. And I'm not a big fan of the word fluff, because I feel like it takes a lot away because we play a fictional game. So the fiction, the background of the races and the realms is really important to me. And sometimes I say the word fluff and I hate myself for it, and I'm emotionally on the inside. But I guess, how did you feel about the story? The story of the game, I guess, is the way I want to put it. How did you feel about all that?
At first, I was like, taken aback a bit, and I was like, what? And it grew on me. And I think what really grew on me, you said already, is that it opened up these sort of possibilities where they could really be inventive, and come up with new things, and I really feel like that's what has been the most fun thing about the game,
Mm,
has been of the new things, some of these old things that you can still use.
mm,
I think that's why for me it's such a cool experience to have totally new factions like Deepkin, um, mixed with like factions that have always been around.
mm.
I think that's really neat, and it gives GW this
Freedom,
this
right?
possibility.
Like
It's freedom. Yeah,
for
exactly.
so long we had the same characters and the same story. Like I played dwarves back in fantasy, which is why I love Dispossessed so much. And for so long, it was the same story all the time. A race in decline, comparing themselves to their elders and the glory of their past, always disappointed. And now the story that you have for Dispossessed is in the mortal realms is they are dispossessed. They have nowhere to call home. So they work in the mines, they work for the engineering guild, they work for the Iron World Arsenal. They'll go anywhere they're needed. And they're like carving out. There was I don't know for people who have read any of the Artifact series, the Grungeny series about the seven deadliest weapons in the mortal realms, and a lot of it talks about like the root kings, so these dispossessed who built their cities in the realm of life in the trees, and instead of using steel they used bark. They made all this stuff out of wood, and like in a very small way you took this tiny really insular isolated faction, and you turned them into something really different, and you gave them expanse, and every single time we see something new you're expanding it. And the gods aren't just these fucking gods who exist in the sky and we never see. They actually deal with mortals on a regular basis, and I think that's so much more interesting. I mean, surely it is for Khorne, right? Instead of just being blood mad warriors, they're trying to be like the noble knights who have something to prove, correct?
Yeah, and I this idea of corn kind of being just like this ravaging
Mm,
horde, um, and like the new models that they brought out for corn, like the Blood Warriors and Blood
mm.
Reavers and the other sort of Mortal Corn units, just really a great expansion for
Yeah, well,
that
suddenly
particular faction.
Khorne has, it's not just demons and demon worshippers. It has like mortals, and they might even look down on demons as like they have nothing to lose, because a demon dies, it goes back to the realm of chaos and it gets reborn at some point. Whereas a mortal has so much more to lose if they don't impress Khorne. I think it's, yeah, it's great. Just looking back at the chat, sorry, a few people commenting on the win condition term. I can't say I coined it. I'm just a big fan of it. Gnome's been saying that he needs a win condition for getting home through traffic. My advice would be strap lasers to the top of your car. You'll get through nice and quick. Alex wanting to try his hand against your list. LLV, sorry, going back a little while in the chat, saying that with the Dispossessed, he feels like if you get double turn 2, you're screwed. I would 100% agree. That was my experience for the vast majority of playing Dispossessed, which is why the two most important moments for me in a game as the Dispossessed, because they're so slow, is turn 1 into 2, which is why when I play, I always plan around not winning turn 2. I try to make it so that my army's shielded if I get double turned, if I'm made to go first, or if I make my opponent go first, that a turn 2 loss of priority won't hurt me as bad. And it's funny because we're going to be talking about some of the new missions in just a second, which actually affect that quite heavily. But I definitely agree. The turn 1 into turn 2, you got to plan. The second most important part with the Dispossessed army is turn 3 into turn 4, because that's usually where you score points and win the game. Triple Slaughter Priest, people suggesting, maybe not the best move. Terribly scary. Oh god, I missed so much chat. I'm so sorry, chat. I love you all. Yes, sorry, Dad Hammer correcting me. Spear of Shadows is the book. Warclaw is the second, which is an audio book. I miss so much chat. I'm so sorry. This is my problem, Andy. I get caught up chatting to you about history and lore and shit, and then I forget about all the beautiful people who are talking to us. However, what I would like to do now is talk about Forbidden Power. Now we've gotten through Sigmar's chastity belt. We've got our forbidden power, and it's again. And part of the reason I wanted to talk about the old lore is how we're now in a world where we have the new lore, where we had the Age of Sigmar First Edition, then we had the Necroquake, then we had Malign Portents, which led us into Second Edition. Now we've just received. Then we got Malign Sorcery with Second Edition. Now we've got Forbidden Power, which I'm assuming is leading us into our next General's Handbook. And every single one of these steps, they're not some offshoot campaign. It's not like as lovely as they were, like the Albion campaign for those who remember Lustria, or the Blood in the Badlands campaign, which I fucking adored. It was spectacular writing. But we're seeing like advances in the world of Age of Sigmar, and that's genius, right? Because it gives you something new and something fresh to fight over each time. So I guess the thing and the reason that I wanted to chat to you, for those who are in the chat who don't know, Andy is a TO. He runs the Wet Coast GT, and you've got another one later in the year as well.
Yeah, so Attack X, which is in Kamloops, and that's weekend of September 14 and 15.
So September 14 and 15, I've decided that I have a new section at the end of every show called Shameless Plugs, where we just shamelessly talk about whatever the fuck my guest has coming up. And that's the best way to do it, because we can try and pretend that it's all organic and shit like that, or we can just talk about our shit, because it's War Dollies. I don't have time to fuck around. We've only got one show a week. Let's not waste time on that. Let's waste time getting sidetracked. So the reason that I wanted to chat to you is I read the Forbidden Power book. I love it. I won't go into the narrative and the background, because I think that people like Dad Hammer, there are so many more people in the world of War Dollies who produce great content, who are so much better at describing the narrative than I am. I will leave it to them. But the thing that I would like to talk about is the competitive play side of things. And we got given a list of brand new battle plans, which some lend themselves to match play. There's very clearly 4 of which that are designed around the idea of match play. And I personally think 2 of them are wonderful for match play. Now, I sent them to you. Andy, what were your, just overall, the 4 new match play missions that came out with Forbidden Power? How did you feel about them?
I really liked them. I read through them and I thought, well, that's cool. Like I thought that they were original and, actually, had the potential to produce some pretty fun games.
Yeah. And I think the thing is, I read them and I'm like, they seem fun, but they seem like they've got a really good balance of competitiveness as well. Dimensional Cascade just chiming in and saying that he faced the Triple Bloodthirster at an event, so I'm assuming the Council of Blood. The named one, God, I can't remember his name.
Scarbrand?
Scarbrand, that's the one. I remember playing against him at Sydney Slaughter against one of the Brishammer boys. Brishammer is a very fantastic, very drunk, very lovely crew of guys from Brisbane, Australia. And he had Scarbrand. Scarbrand was on 2 wounds. And I charged a Stonehorn with full wounds into him in turn 5 of the game. Now, what I want to say is that I'd already, at this point, I think I was ahead on victory points. So it was coming down to it was coming down to a major for me. And it was one where if heroes killed heroes, they got points. Sydney Slaughter does specific objectives, right? And so I was like, yeah, but I'm going to fucking finish off Scarbrand. So I charged the Stonehorn into him because he was on 2 wounds left. I was like, a Stonehorn on full wounds on the charge should do it. The Stonehorn does D6 mortal wounds on the charge. I rolled a 1. I was like, okay, that's all right. I have a Stonehorn on full wounds with all of its attacks with +1 to hit. It only has to do 1 wound to Scarbrand and he's dead. He didn't. Spoiler alert, that Stonehorn was a fucking potato. He achieved nothing. He didn't do a single wound, so Scarbrand was left on 1 wound. And Andy, as a Khorne player, what happens with Scarbrand as he gets hurt?
So his Carnage
Mm.
melee weapon
Mm-hmm.
really really good, and
Mm.
so does his order melee weapon.
Yeah, basically, he is one of the only models in the game that gets better the more you hurt it. And when he is on one wound remaining, he will fuck you up endlessly until you take him down. So he basically took my Stonehorn by the horns, twisted its head off, and then made sweet love to the stump of its neck. And which lost me the game. However, the bloke I was playing was a dead set legend. It was an awesome moment, but I just could not believe what I had just witnessed. He has an insane amount of damage output. So, Dimensional Cascade, 100%. I am right there with you. I have been wrecked by Scarbrand. Um, and he's terrifying. He's an absolute knight. Dad Hammer just saying that he's going to do a Forbidden Power show next Monday night, which for those here in Canada slash the west coast of the US means it will, I believe, be Wednesday afternoon. No, sorry, Monday night, Sunday afternoon for us. So give that a listen. He's heaps better at like narrative and fiction and lore than me. I'm just a drunken Australian who loves playing war dollies. Um, Gnomes Bane, he didn't just dunk on the poor Stonehorn, he just absolutely shit mixed him. What we're going to chat about and what we're going to look at are the new battle plans that we've got. And I have my wonderful Forbidden Power book right here. And so we're going to just have a chat about So I've broken it down. Now there's 3 battle plans that I'd like to present to the chat, present to everybody watching, present to everybody listening at home, as wonderful fodder for future tournaments. And I think TOs such as yourself, Andy, should consider adding them to the mix, and if not, replacing a good section of the old ones. And then there's 2 others that are clearly match play, but for my choice, and this is the honest wargamer, so I'll be honest, they aren't balanced for competitive play. So the first one that we're looking at is called the Penumbral Domain. And you can see the deployment map on your screens right now. Now, this is the first one that I flicked to you, Andy. I like it because it's... The reason I really like these battle plans is they have a really strong element of narrative to them while being quite balanced competitively. And I think that's clever. Just on the whole, having a read of them, how did you feel about the battle plans that have just been released?
Yeah, I think what I like about this one is like sometimes I've been kind of burned by the kind of random objective type scenarios. I feel like if I've won them because way, or I've lost them because things didn't go my way. Uh, and with this one, like the Penumbral Domain, I look at it and I think, well, um, the if you can control the objectives near your territory, then if you which ones become worth more, there's not going to be a huge swing in what happens. So if you are doing well as a player and out of 4 of the objectives, then you're still very likely to win the scenario.
You would if you control 3, you would win. So for those who haven't read Forbidden Power, who are yet to get to the competitive part of it, Dad Hammer, I assume you were just fucking doing what I did, which is just getting a massive hobby boner over how much amazing lore they gave us, which is kind of like the Necroquake from Malign Sorcery. So Penumbral. So for those who don't know it, on the screen, the middle, the golden objective, isn't actually an objective. It's a penumbral engine, and you can check the Warhammer community site for what that is. But as we see, you only got a quarter of the battlefield each to deploy in, and you've got to be 12 inches from enemy territory, which means you've got in that middle section that you see over there, you've got like that sweet little gap when no one's in, but you can still capture both of your objectives because they're 12 inches out from that middle. Now, each turn you roll to see what effect the penumbral is going to have. It's slightly different to the regular rules in that it swaps on a 4 up. So again, check the Warhammer community is a spectacular site. It's got amazing amounts of info. So go and have a look at that if you really want to see it, if you haven't seen them already. But basically, depending on what it is, two objectives are going to be worth 2 points and two objectives are going to be worth 1 point. So if you roll and it's the penumbral engine is on one function, which is 50% of the time, the two on the horizontal line are going to be worth 2 and the other two are going to be worth 1. If you roll the other effect on a 4-up, it's going to be the top two are worth it, and it changes every battle round. Now, it's kind of like the shifting objectives, which is one of the General's Handbook 2018-19 battle plans. But the problem with shifting objectives is the way the board is set, it's 3 objectives and only one of them's worth bonus points. I really like that effectively both players control one objective that's worth more and one objective that's worth less, and you're fighting over those middle so that you can push them off. What was your feel on this one?
Yeah, that's how I think about how like I would play this, and you could be aggressive and try and take your opponent's objectives because you're not that far away really. I mean, you could very easily in turn one take them, but then obviously you would need to worry about uh, double turned or your opponent hitting you back. So I think this one would produce some interesting tactical decisions. Which I mean, ideally, that's on is a game that for turns, but is going to be fun for both people to isn't going to be won by some bad rolls
Yeah,
for the
exactly.
objectives.
Or like, and I think that's
Yeah.
the danger with, say, shifting objectives or other random objective ones like the relocating orb, is a couple of bad rolls, and very quickly you find yourself without anything that you can do to get back into it. Um, Gnome's Bane sounding it's a cool sounding plan. Mr. McGrath saying it's not a bad battle plan because, yeah, exactly. You're never going to be fucked over by the majority because you always control one of the ones that's worth more and one of the ones that's worth less. They're always in your deployment zone. So it's entirely about competing to be in the best position on them. Now, objectives, missions like, say, shifting objectives or relocating orb, they obviously have changing objectives built into them, but they can very quickly bottle you up and be advantageous to your opponent. Whereas this one, if you are to get bottled, you've already lost 3 out of the 4 objectives, so you should be losing anyway. What I find I really like about this, and I'm very sorry to the chat because you keep having to watch me make new cocktails, but I decided that I'd make old fashions today. And unfortunately, they're a little bit more labor intensive, and I don't know where the camera scores, so I'm not entirely sure how much you're seeing. But the thing that I think we can all agree on is there's nothing worse in a competitive game of Age of Sigmar when you feel like you didn't have a look in. Now, in the Penumbral engine, you've got the element of random chance, which I think every game should have because we're playing a dice game and it's war dollies. But the setup and the gameplay is balanced because if you fuck your shit up, if you deploy poorly and capitalize on one objective but let your opponent take the other, if your opponent's in the lead, it's not because they got lucky, it's because they outplayed you and got more objectives. Dimensional Cascade saying better than Star Strike. Gnome's Bane chiming in saying like Star Strike, where you can go wide to be ready for the side objectives and then get fucked over by it being on the complete other side. And for me, I really like this kind of battle plan because it means that you know what you're fighting for. Yes, they might change in what they're worth and that might have some effect, but you can actually plan around controlling 3 objectives and then no matter what, you win. If you play better on this scenario, you win by like gameplay and dice rolls of like attacks and things like that, as opposed to dice rolls for where the objective lands or moves to. So yeah, I really like this one. It tickles me in a very fun competitive place. Now, Andy, the reason that I've got you on and the reason that wanted to talk to you about this, other than the fact that you're a corn aficionado, is as a TO, how do you feel about this battle plan?
I'm looking at it and I'm thinking this is a strong contender to be in a future tournament.
Okay, because can I tell you what my dream of this show is? Can I? Because I want to talk to you about my dream, Andy. My dream is that your next event features. My dream is three out of the next battle plans I'm going to present you. I'll accept two. I'll be happy with one. But I would love for you to consider some of these. You know what? This entire show is just a sales pitch at the Forbidden Power battle plans. That's all I'm doing to you. You're happy to receive my sales pitch, right?
Totally, totally. And I'm looking at this one. What I like about this one as well is that the setup. I don't think I've seen where you set up in a quarter of the board.
But it's a different.
Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
No, you are right. And the thing that I like is it's a different setup, but it's not a convoluted setup. Uh, Looking at it, yep, Dimensional Cascade, as we spoke before, likes it better than Star Strike. But the tricky part would being getting enough penumbral engines, which the Gnome's Bane, yes, you get a penumbral engine in the box set. I haven't built mine yet. It seems complicated, and I'm a little bit too drunk, a little bit too much of the time to build it. I will get around to it eventually. But the thing is, you could use any terrain piece as the center. Effectively, you just have a center thingy that has the penumbral engine rules and affects the area around it. Or you could just play it without the penumbral engine and just on the roll it changes whatever those four, whichever the primary of the two of the four are. I think it's a great match play battle plan. I would really like to buy a beer for whoever wrote the battle plans in the Forbidden Power book. So if you do watch the show, if you are a watcher and know them, please let them know that the next time I assume they're in England, I'm in England, or they're in Canada/North America, I really want to get drunk with them because they fucking hit it out of the park with a few of these battle plans. Doesn't want to come to just bring an orange to the next event. You're 100% right. Blaze me mad. We could just put an orange in the middle of the board. Yeah, and Gnome's Bane, very satisfied with drunk build / paint is the best way to do it. That's where the inspiration comes from. You know what we've been doing out of 10. Andy, out of 10, how do you rate this battle plan and why?
I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. I think primarily because, as I mentioned, I like it's a very different setup with the territories. I like how the objectives are close enough that you could potentially be challenging for them turn one. So it has a bit of the feeling of missions where you're close enough to like jump in on them.
Yeah.
But you know that there's going to be repercussions. So I feel like this is a mission where players are going to be down each other's throat turn one, and that just makes it fun. So it's definitely a solid 9 out of 10.
Yeah, and I also like for me looking at it, right? If you took turn 1.1, now chat, I'm going to challenge you with some maths because I'm way too drunk to do it myself. Because it's currently coming up on 9 o'clock in the evening, so I'm well and truly beyond maths. But the two objectives on any quarter are 12 inches from the center. So if we're 12 and 12, can someone do the 3.14, like the Pythagoras theorem, whatever, for how far apart any two objectives are? Because that would be so you're 24 inches apart from your opponent. Drunk math is the worst math, but how far apart are each of those objectives? Because that... Sorry, go.
16.9 inches.
16.9, there we go. Which, if you have a 6-inch capture zone on any objective, it means that you're only 10.9 inches from it. So a good run roll with most units, or an auto run of 6, a lot of units can be like threatening your opponent's objectives turn 1. And I do it. So yeah, I'm all about it. And I think it's good. Yeah, Andy, they're saying you're the Rain Man. You've got it. 20, though, 20, Salathon's saying 20. I'm not going to get competitive with the math because, as I said, I'm not in a position to be any good at doing math. But we'll see. Yeah, Alex chiming in. Imagine a Skaven vortex right in the middle of that. You could quite comfortably shut down an objective for everyone, and then just feed clan rats onto it so that it stayed yours. But I really dig it. I think it's amazing. And yes, even dispossessed could potentially do that, which that tickles me. The fact that it's the kind of effect. Like, I always ask myself two questions: could a slow army win this mission, and could Beastclaw Raiders win this mission? Now, no shade if you're a Beastclaw Raiders player, but I feel like a lot of the time, given that it's about bodies on objectives and about having multiple scoring units, like if there's 6 objectives on the battlefield, Beastclaw Raiders don't have a fucking look in. They're going to get shit mixed no matter what, because they can't leave a unit of Mournfang on an objective to capture it. So I like that this is a mission that Beastclaw Raiders can play and have a good time as well. Which is, we should think about our ogre, weird frost dog riding cousins, right, Andy?
Yeah, and this is one of the things I like about the game again is that it's a fantasy game, and I want to see monsters
Mm-hmm.
and giant creatures and heroes riding them and all that kind of shit. And I
You want
missions in a tournament that encourages people to bring that stuff.
Yeah, and that's for me where it's really disappointing when you see, and I will never stop saying that I don't like Better Part of Valor. Whoever wrote that battle plan, I love you. You're a lovely person. I see what you were trying to do, and it's a great idea. Unfortunately, in practice, that battle plan fucks more people than Riley Reid. So it's really hard to compare that battle plan to one where people have a better shot at it, because without it, they're just not going to get it there. So I dig seeing that. I dig seeing a battle plan like this, which is competitive. It's got an element of randomness to it, but you can still get the win. So I'm about it. I like it. And as you said, what was it? A 9, a 9.5?
Out of 10?
Yeah.
I would say it's a solid
Solid
9.
9.
And actually looking at it now, I want to play this mission in my next game.
Yeah, and I think that for me, this battle plan is about, can you outplay your opponent off their objectives? And unlike, say, Knife to the Heart, which has such a long deployment distance between you and your opponent, this battle plan could really very quickly be throwing one way or the other. So yeah, a few people in the chat talking about what they're working on. Myself, I'm working on converting an Ironweld Arsenal army using Free Guild as the battle line. Andy, are you working on anything at the moment?
Well, I'm kind of celebrating because I've just finished my Corn army.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? It's whenever a War Early player finishes an army, it's a beautiful moment. So everyone in the chat, just some snaps for Andy because he's finally finished an army. It's always a special thing when you get the army done. So are you looking forward to the next project?
Well, the next project is really to, I've got all the possible demon units to summon in, other than another Bloodthirster. So, I've had one game where I had 8 blood tithe points, and I'm like, damn, I need another Bloodthirster.
So you're basically now you're putting together a summoning pool.
So I'm putting together a summoning pool. It's pretty good so far. I want to really make that look nice so that
get them into a nice place. So in the chat, look, I'm not going to correct you because I think that's 100% right. We've got some people who are Salathon, he's just drinking. He's not doing any hobby. He's just drinking, which is effectively what I'm doing as well. I'm just talking about hobby, which you are with me, so that's fine. Pinning a bunch of old gut busters. Hypnocracker, talk to me about your gut busters, Because back in Australia, I have a Gutbusters army that is lovingly boxed and waiting to come over to me here so I can start playing for it again. Though LLV will probably chime in a second and say, it's mixed destruction. And he is right. It's mixed destruction. We've got some Slanesh getting painted by Cool Bunny. Given how much she mentally fucked me at Wet Coast GT with her daughters, the last thing I need her doing is mentally fucking me on the tabletop with her Slanesh. I feel like that's only going to get worse. Who else have we got? We got Jazzfest commenting saying that nobody finishes an army, and he's 100% right. He or she, I don't know what you are, and you can be whatever you want. You could be a bird person if that's it, as long as you can type on a keyboard. I assume that, yeah, by the fact that you're painting Summoning Pool, you have not finished your army just yet.
Oh, exactly. That's a truism. Like, an army is never done.
Yeah. It's you've always like I'm still building hammerers. I'm painting a bunch of dwarves. Salathon commenting and saying that you hate the term war dollies. I understand. I've met a number of people who do, but mostly it started with a small community. I don't know if it was international, but it started in a small community of Australians who then named themselves D3 Mortal Wounds as a gaming group because all they did was punch a ludicrous amount of beer and play Warhammer. And the thing they found was that for them, Warhammer was all about fun and the joy of it, and they got a little bit frustrated with people taking it too seriously, so they decided to go the opposite end of the spectrum and start calling it war dollies to constantly remind themselves that it was about fun, and they were just effectively being a bunch of kids getting drunk and playing them. So that for me, that's where that phrase came from those beautiful humans. So I also do understand that for some people it's a very frustrating term, and I completely appreciate it. But for me, it's anytime I say war dollies, it's because I freaking love it, and I have no shame. So I go to work and I talk to people about it, and they look at me and they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah, well, I love war dollies." So but I do see how it can be an annoying term for some people. Unfortunately, I'll never stop saying it. It's stuck in my vernacular. Beefer Fraud has joined us. Mate, what's going on is we're talking Forbidden Power and we're talking the new battle plans with Andy, who is the voice, the devil on my shoulder, or potentially, no, devil. You play Legions of Nagash and you play Khorne, so you're not an angel on my shoulder, you're a devil on my shoulder. You're a TO, and we're talking about the new battle plans from all of the wonderful things that we got in Forbidden Power over the weekend. Some Skaven being painted. Oh god, I'm so far back. Gnome's Bane subscribed for 2 months now. Andy, if someone was at 2 months gestation of a baby, how far along would they be?
Well, I mean, I have quite a bit of experience with this kind of thing. So,
as in you've gestated a number of children yourself?
No, but
You've seen it happen. You've been there. You've been responsible for it.
Yeah. And
yep.
2 months, eh? Well, I mean, it's probably the size of like tangerine,
okay,
I think.
So Gnome Spain, you and I have a wonderful war dolly baby the size of a tangerine. That's a good place to be. Getting some ogre, or I think that's technically Ogren imagery coming in there. Dad Hammer's painting an entire chamber, warrior chamber. So 9x30 liberators, 6x20 paladins and judicators, and 36 prosecutors, and all the characters. Dad Hammer, you exist on a level of hobby that I will never be able to achieve. And I'm sorry that I can't be there with you. I'll try, but you've always got me over the barrel. LLV saying old pod handles you first heard war dollies, and Dr. Vulcan finding the phrase funny, so he's throwing bits behind it. He likes it so much he's throwing bits. War dollies, Gnome's Bane saying war dollies keeps him grounded. And Salathon saying that he started playing Getting Drunk and playing Mordheim in South Australia, so that's pretty much where it is. And yeah, I mean, let's be honest, I think alcohol is a very important part of the hobby. Andy, wouldn't you say?
Oh, for sure. when I was playing Tommy's Legion of Nagash and having a few beers, and I don't know, just like you just stride, I think.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, I also remember
yeah,
at your event at the West Coast GT, when we arrived, the cafe was open, but the bar wasn't. And then when the bar opened, there was a steady trickle of people just constantly going in and out, like getting a drink. And like, let's be honest, that's again, it's a part of the fun. We got to be where we want to be, and we got to be drinking what we want to drink. Um, Maybe that's it. The Honest Wargamer has a workbook for how to play War Dollies. Maybe the thing we need is a workbook for how to survive a weekend of hard drinking and War Dollies as well.
I think the key is to pace yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, after all these years of drinking, that I'm not good at that, and
Well, no, but to be fair, you say that. You and I were a part of a Mario Kart themed pub crawl, and you held your own for a reasonable amount of time. I think the issue that you had is when you hit your tipping point, it's it's like a hardcore tipping point. Some people they go from 0 to 10, 20, 30, 40. Like they work their way to 100 steadily. You were pretty much fantastic until you needed to stop. Like you go 0 to 99 in a step. Cool Bunny having a laugh because she was there. But yeah, is that a fair assessment of how you put alcohol into your body system?
yeah, that's pretty much what happens to me. As soon as I get to the point where I'm not talking anymore because I've lost the ability to form sentences,
Yep.
then that's probably when I should leave.
Yeah, see,
Um,
the more drunk that I get, the more I dance like a, a white girl pretending to be Britney Spears when she's 13. That's when you know that I've gotten to the point where you need to be like, hey man, you should stop. So to the stream, if I ever start dancing and singing Hit Me Baby One More Time to you, that's when you need to stop me and tell me that I need to drink some water. Um, Gnomes Bane needing more info on the pub crawl. And asking if it was mostly throwing bananas. Actually, to the chat, we do this every week. So, what's the random weird shit that people can recognize in you is the reason they shouldn't be drinking anymore? What's your telling? What's your tell? What's your drunken tell? I kind of like that. LLV claiming he's going to come out and show us how it's done. And letting us know. Salafon, I thought for a second your response to that question of how to know when you're too drunk was I'm stripping, but then we're talking about your celestial warbringers, and as like you were talking about painting your models, not about stripping as a human being. That's fine. Okay, yep. Cool Bunny saying Gatorade for surviving the weekend. Advil, I'm assuming for day 2, and under eye refreshing patches. They're like that's like putting a piece of cucumber under your eye, right? To like kind of bolster the skin. Andy, do you take particular notice of yourself on a Monday morning after an event and feel like you just got like kicked in the face repeatedly by someone with a very small shoe?
yeah, I think the phrase is mouth like a camel trader's flip flop.
Yeah, that's a pretty fair Monday morning. I remember after Wet Coast going to work on the Monday, and I was dry as a dead dingo's donger. It wasn't good. And Salafan saying, chiming in
Rough as a
saying,
badger's bum.
sorry, say again.
Rough as a badger's bum.
Yeah, or like a sandpaper enema. That's quite rough as well. Wouldn't want one of those. Anyway, we got a little bit sidetracked there. I'm so sorry, chat. I blame the chat. If you're listening to this back as a podcast, the reason for this sidetrack was the chat. Uh, but we're going to get back on track. We are going to keep going on with the going on, and we're going to talk about the next one. Now, this is actually the battle plan that I would like to see included in tournament packs the most. When reading it, it lit a fire in my soul. I got really excited. I'm going to grab it because I want to go over this one carefully. This is the third battle plan of the like quote unquote, like not necessarily said, but clearly meant to be the matched play battle plans. this is the third one in Forbidden Power. Now, I don't know if those of you listening / watching have read Forbidden Power yet, but it's called Sorcerer's Streams. And it's the third of the battle plans presented in the book, and I really, really like it. So it's 6 objectives, 3 in each territory, 18 inches from the board edge and 18 inches from each other, which you can see from the screen. If you are listening back at home, you might need to do some quick maths yourselves. And the feature of this one, armies, I should say, are 12 inches apart. So you can deploy close enough to capture your objectives, but not enough to screen them. And the thing for me is that with this objective, you score as normal. Sorry, so you score 1 victory point at the end of each of your turns for each objective you control. However, and I'm going to read this so that everyone in the chat can understand it clearly. At the start of each battle round, after the first, the player taking the second turn in that battle round can pick 1 objective on the battlefield and remove it from play. So that means if you win priority, you're now asking yourself, do I want to give the turn away to my opponent? Because if I take it, they get to remove an objective, and they can say, take one of mine. And like, I guess for me, the obvious thing would be like, I would remove one of my opponents that they think they've got so that they're not competing on it anymore. Andy, how did you feel about this?
I love it because my brain is on fire right now thinking of all the different ways you might approach this. And, one thought I've just had is that battle round, there's going to be less objectives. So, maybe an army that can get across the board, all of the objectives maybe turn 1, go ahead on points that way, will then be an advantage.
But I guess the thing is, if you're flooding the board with your units turn 1 to capture all the objectives, you have put yourself in, you're less than 9 inches from your opponent, right? Oh wait, no, sorry, what's 24 minus 18? Jesus, 6. You're within a 3-inch chart. You're 3 inches from your opponent. They can move and be within 3 inches. So you can take 6 points turn 1 easily, but you have to hyperextend your army to do it. And like you say, you're going to have less objectives every turn. So I guess to you, Andy, like if you were looking at this with your Khorne army, what would you be thinking? How would you be playing it?
Probably what I would do is I would try to whip to fury the Blood Warriors and throw them forwards and maybe try and snag one of my opponent's objectives. Maybe even throw the Blood Reavers forward, maybe on a yeah, maybe they wouldn't be able to get there, but there's a chance that they could snag one of the objectives as well. Maybe do something like that, and then if the Blood Reavers die, then it's no big deal.
Yeah, and by the end, asking in the chat, by the end of the game, there's only 2 objectives left on the board. You go from 6 to 2. I guess the other thing that I really like for this one, and I've said it before today, I've said it every time, my 2 favorite elements of the game are the priority roll and your ordering in combat, because they force choices on someone, which means you've got to play competitively, you've got to play tactically, you've got to be thinking about it. And Varango DNB commenting exactly what I'm saying. The player who goes second can easily put a wrench in their opponent's plan by taking enemy points closer to their main force. But the other thing that I also like about this, like, let's say I had an objective on my side of the board, let's say on one of the flanks, right? And I know that my opponent chooses to take the first turn. I know that they easily get it. Or I've got a weak unit there that I don't want to lose. I remove my own objective from the battlefield, making that side of the board fucking pointless for them to go to. And then they got to ask themselves, do they want to move over to that side of the board to clear an objective that isn't there anymore? There's so much decision making and tactics in this mission. I fucking love it. This to me, and I'm going to put it out there, is the best battle plan that Games Workshop have ever produced. Just in the short, and in the chat, I'd love to let me know if you think I'm wrong or right. I think there is so much tactical diversity in this game. There's so much planning. This is what better part of Valor should have been. The mission where you burn objectives and usually is over by turn 2. This is the perfect version of this mission. So yeah, and Dimensional Cascade saying, did I just say I have a weak unit? I mean, like, let's talk about Iron Drakes. They're weak if they're not in the shooting phase in my turn. They're shithouse in combat, so they get fucked up in all of my opponent's turns. But for me, this is possibly the penultimate, the best battle plan I've ever seen. I love it. I love that it forces you to think in the priority phase. But then, so if you choose to go first or give your opponent the first turn, you're then offering them a really hard decision as well. It is just such a great battle plan for that. It is all about decision making, which means there's more chance for mistakes, which means it's a better game. Andy, I've just about done everything I could to this battle plan except give it a happy ending. Talk to me, tell me what you think about it.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about I was playing Scorched Earth on Friday night, and definitely that's one where you've got one of the half, and your opponent manages to take it and burn it. It's like you said, basically then that point in space becomes totally useless, and there's no, even if your opponent has units there that you want to kick the teeth in, it's an objective based game. You better go take the objectives. So I think you're totally right that if you can remove an objective here where you have something maybe, then forcing your opponent to make a tough decision, go after that thing anyway, knowing that if they've dealt with it, then it won't come back on them, or should they go and hold the objective?
It
So
it gives so
yeah,
many questions, and like I said, sorry, I'll double check, but I'm almost 100% certain that I said before, and I am right. It's only a 12-inch deployment on this one, which means that yes, 12 inches. So you are within 3 of your objectives. So you're capturing your 3 objectives definitely. However, for your opponent to capture them, they're what, 3, 4, 5. They're 5 inches away from you if they want to capture these objectives, or like 5.9 or whatever. But it basically means that your opponent, even if you're a movement 4 dwarf, is within a 3-inch charge turn 1. So armies like Sylvaneth could potentially flick forward and put that pressure on, but an average turn from a decent player will clear them off and give them a lot more breathing room. And at the end, they can just start taking off the objectives that you felt were yours and you were controlling, or they can take off their own and make their own objectives moot, so you're playing in the wrong place. I just really like all of the versatility in this list, in this battle plan, and I'm quite excited. I think of all of the ones that we will talk about today, this is the one most likely to enter into tournaments. And like we did with the last one, Andy, out of 10, what do you give this battle plan?
Yeah, I mean, similarly, it's going to get a 9 out of 10. I was just thinking about it, like, with the Blood Reavers, if I set them up forward as they can go, if I get a run roll of 6 or spend a command point to run of 6 with their +1 to run and charge, they can get within 6 in, they can be 5 inches from one of my opponent's objectives. You know, and so when it can lead to maybe people being kind of aggressive turn 1 to some some very bloody battles.
I think personally for me, the thing I like about this mission is I don't actually think it lends itself to an alpha strike. Now I could be proven wrong. We could be 6 months down the track. It's in every tournament pack, and in which case I will claim it was all me and it was all this show that did it. But I would freaking love to see this this mission included because I think it forces people to play for the late game to win rather than a turn one into turn two victory. So yeah, I really like it. Dimensional Cascade saying they think it should be the last scenario of every event. Andy, I like. Sorry, I probably shouldn't have said that because I would have rather asked you where in your event packs as a TO would you place this mission?
That's a really good question. That's okay. So what's happening at the late stages of a tournament? Pretty much at that point, you've got two things happening. You've got people are pretty much where they should be in terms of playing people that are at the same kind of level. People who are really digging deep. If they're on 3 or 4 wins, this is the point where they could win or lose the whole tournament. Really,
yeah.
Is this a scenario where that's going to give somebody a fair shot of winning the tournament? And I would say yeah, because there's no randomness to it. You think it through, and if you mess it up, I think it's on you, right? So I think it's totally a good scenario for like maybe round 5.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for me this feels like a round 4, round 5 mission. If you're trying to separate the top players, it's right there. The thing I dig a lot about it is that if you win priority, usually by the time you get to the last couple of turns of the game, it's a very easy call to be like, I am going to take it and continue whatever advantage I have or stop my opponent from having a double turn. Whereas this one goes, if I take priority, I give my opponent a massive objective bonus. But if I give priority, which is giving the on-table advantage to my opponent, I'm taking a massive objective bonus myself. I love the split in it. And I agree. I think round 4, round 5, this is a great one for most tournaments. So yeah, I agree with you and with Dimensional Cascade. It's right up there. Blaze Be Mad, sorry, just in the background there, Andy, I made myself another cocktail. And to do it every time I'm having to peel the rind off of an orange. Blaze Be Mad saying that every time I pick up the peeler to do that, you think I'm going to cut myself. If it happens, I'll be a consummate professional. I will cry a little bit and then I'll get on with the job. But thank you for your concern. I need to be flaming the orange for a proper Manhattan. It's actually a spiced rum old fashioned, and I'll have you know that I have been flaming the rind on all of them. So there we go. Very, very, we're being traditional here. We're not doing it wrong. And a bunch of people just chatting about the events that they've got coming. Oh no, you're a North Melbourne supporter? That's terrible news. Digital Keegan asking you'd love to follow along. Is there anything online you can see for the battle plans? I don't think so as of yet. These are the battle plans out of Forbidden Power. So you can't follow along online with them just with the image that you have on screen. Or for those of you listening to this back as a podcast, the verbal image that I will create for you now by saying that this mission is fought over 6 objectives, 3 in each opponent's territory, traditional deployment, so 12 inches from the base edge and 12 inches from your opponent's section. You have half of it. And then each of those 3 objectives is 18 inches from the corner and 18 inches from the board edge and then 18 inches from each other. So it's like a little 6-pack. Imagine a tiny little objective-based 6-pack of beers. That's what you're playing over. And it sits through the middle there. That's the mission we've been talking about. I freaking love it. Andy, sounds like you're a fan of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, just the last thing I would say about it is, normally when you have a scenario that has like 6 objectives, they're normally way more than, right? And so this is the first time seeing, 6 objectives that are all reasonably close. I mean, basically you could have a model on the line between the territories that could be, having to make a choice between
Mm.
objective or do I, keep my own.
Mm.
But obviously, as the objectives start disappearing, then interesting that they, maybe become more spread out. I don't know.
It's another great
So
thing about this battle plan as well that I see is by the end of the game, there's only 2 left, right? But like at worst, and again, I'm going to go to the chat for maths. I'm going to go to the chat for maths, or you, Andy, given that you are a bit of a wizard and an educator extraordinaire. So if we use Pythagoras' theorem again to work out the length of a triangle, if the baseline of that triangle is 36 inches and the height is 12 inches, what is the hypotenuse of that triangle? I'll throw that out there again because that at the end of this mission is the furthest that 2 objectives could be. And for me, I really like it for that reason. I'm so sorry for everyone at home who is watching or listening to this that I've brought maths into this so often. I fucking am so very sorry. Or math. I think in North America it's called math. In Australia we call it maths. I don't know which is right. I don't want to be the Juliet in the middle of this Montague and Capulet battle. But at the very worst, that's how far apart you're competing. Yeah, Hypnocracken, you are correct. What is this nerd class? I am so sorry for bringing it to that. Sorry, what was that, Andy?
I know I was just laughing because that was yeah, we are actually in the nerd zone here.
We damn right. We're in the War Dolly nerd zone again. Sorry if War Dollies is upsetting to anybody. I threw So Gnomes Bane says the correct answer is train 2 traveling at 60 miles per hour. Of course, Dimensional Cascade. I hurt your brain. Veronica correcting me. It is math now that I need to be better.
I don't have a. If anybody can do the square root of 1,620, then that's the number. But I can't do square root on my phone
So the
apparently.
square root of 1,620 is the answer. So there we go. The answer is hippopotamus, Salathon says. Great. 37 inches, LLV says. And I would believe LLV, right? He knows his shit. Embrace the War Dolly. Dr. Vulcan says, as a mathematician, I am required to donate in support of math-related conversations. Oh, great. LLV saying 38, Dr. Vulcan saying 40.2.
I got 40.2.
You know what? I'm an idiot, and I did quite well at school back in high school. I don't want to toot my own horn too hard, but I was shithouse at mathematics. So I am never going to say I know the right answer. I square root of 14. We've devolved into maths. That's where we are, chat. We're going to go on to the next one as soon as we've solved this. LLV wants to know is it the square root of 1440. You know what? This is the Australian show. You might watch the earlier show in the day made by Rob and Nathan, the British as Age of Sigmar show, and they deal with all of the heavy questions. We bring you the competitive updates with a generous helping of whatever the fuck happens. And that's why we're here today. That's what we're here about. Hypnocracken saying that he needs a medicinally subscribed beverage to deal with this maths headache that we find ourselves in. And let's get out of that by looking at the third. So I got 5 battle plans. This is battle plan 2 that I want to talk about, but only 3 of them are the ones that I think are really competitive. And I figured we'd lead with those. Now the third one, some of you might recognize because it's been out for a while and it was in the Malign Sorcery book. So that's the book that we're going to talk about next. And it is the Chained Colossus. Now, it's not just talking about the mountain from Game of Thrones being chained in some kind of weird German BDSM movie. This is talking about the Chained Purple Sun, the original Purple Sun, the OG gangster of endless spells. And it's... Oh, God, we're still going on maths. That's okay. This is actually one of the match play missions. So there's 2 in Malign Sorcery. One of them, I think, is hot shit. So I don't necessarily think, and if you have the Malign Sorcery book and you are a big fan of it and you love the mission Magical Supremacy, I'd love to hear why. but I think you're wrong. The Chain Colossus, on the other hand, I think is actually not only a really interesting mission narratively, it's a really great mission competitively. Now, Andy, were you aware of this mission before I spoke to you about it earlier today?
No, I wasn't actually.
Hmm.
I didn't pick up Malign Sorcery's book, to be honest,
Hmm.
and I've even looked at this. I don't think.
Yeah, I actually think that most people with Malign Sorcery got to the end of the artifacts and then didn't finish it. And if you are playing at home, the Chained Colossus is the last page. So you have to read through all of the artifacts, and normally you'd stop here, right? You get to the artifacts of Haish, you'd finish those, and then you'd go, well, we've just got points for the endless spells that I already know. I don't need to worry about that. But these last two battle plans in the book are their match play battle plans. Magical Supremacy, like I spoke about, I think is hot shit because you get victory points for casting spells near objectives, which fucks some armies over really hard, but whereas armies like Zinch or a Nagash just score like 6 or 7 victory points before they've even finished turn one. It's dumb, and that's why we're not talking about it. What we are talking about is this battle plan right here, the Chain Colossus. Gnome's Bane saying that this mission is boss. Blaze Me Mad saying you love the graphics. I created them all myself because I was a little bit concerned that if I just took pictures or scanned the book that I might get in trouble. I don't know how copyright works. I'm not an intelligent person. So I figured I'd create my own. None of these are to scale. That's why we've got the numbers in there. And yeah, Alex Vanil just has SAS Asas, I don't know what it is, saying that it's pretty fun. Now, the downside to doing this mission at a tournament is you would need a scenery piece or a model that would represent the purple sun on each table. But the way the mission is played is that there's 4 objectives around the outside. Those are the white dots you can see. They're 24 inches from the edge of the map, and they're 12 inches up from the horizontal line. Now, each player deploys on the horizontal. It's a standard deployment where you set up 12 inches from your opponent's territory. So 12 inches between you, which means you are deploying on the line of 2 objectives. Your opponent is deploying on the line of 2 objectives. Now, you score at the end of the battle round 1 objective for each of those objectives that you control. For each objective, you score 1 victory point. Now, the purple sun in the middle isn't controlled by whoever goes second in the battle round. It's controlled by whoever scores more points. So if you control 3 of the victory points, you get to move the sun. If you control even, it doesn't move at all. It stays still. Now, this is the thing. So it's a purple sun. It's doing all the purple sun shit that it normally does. But at the end of the battle, if it's in your opponent's completely in your opponent's territory, you get 3 extra victory points, which I think is a really interesting mechanic plan-wise. Andy, how does this speak to you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have such a strong feeling for this one, but I can see this. Yeah, tactically, do then is rush for one of your opponent's objectives just to kind of move. I mean, if I was probably tournament, I might, other than I might say that, hey, look, it's not a purple sun, it's just a token that you're going to move, and
And
maybe do it that way instead.
Dassa in the chat saying that it ends up potentially being just win more, which is if you need to take 3 objectives or you have to take 2 and stop your opponent scoring 1 to move it. It potentially is just kind of creating exponential growth for your army, which I guess I understand. The other thing that I see is that it offers a bit of an option between, like, competitively, if you are just thinking about victory points, putting it deep into your opponent's territory is clearly the answer, right? Like, you just want to go deep. But if turn 1 they're putting pressure on your objectives, you might, and you somehow get, like, score the extra one, you could be tempted to put it somewhere different to do damage from the Purple Sun's ability, which is then reducing your chance of winning the overall game. I think it offers a little bit of flexibility, Um, However, and there's the reason it's the third one on my list of things that should be considered for match play is I think it's got potential. I think it's got a little bit of interest, but this battle plan very much suits an Alpha Strike army, except for the fact that if you Alpha Strike your opponent and control the sun, you are then definitely pushing the sun into your models as they affect your opponents. Um, your thoughts, Andy, on that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to um this in a tournament,
Mm,
and I see what you mean, where you could potentially make a decision to do damage rather than
mm,
moving it to a strategic location to score more points, maybe.
mm.
So I'm just wondering how uh, kind of players would react to this being in a tournament pack.
Yeah,
How they would feel.
I think this
You know,
one.
having the
Yeah, sorry, go.
having you know having something else on the board that can potentially do damage. I mean,
Mm,
I yeah, I mean, maybe that would be kind of an interesting change up for a tournament.
mm, definitely. And I think like just looking at it at the end, I think people are right in saying that it's kind of a force multiplier for people who are already doing well. But I do like that it offers a little bit of I like all battle plans that offer a little bit of question. I agree though. I think that I'd be happy to see it in an event, but it'd have to be game one or two. Um, if it was a
Yeah,
little bit like at the point where matchups are still a little bit in flux, and realistically the the balance of power there really is probably sitting one way more than the other. But yeah, I just the reason I wanted to put this one there is I think we are very quick to only choose missions from the General's Handbook and the core book, and I think so often we skip the missions that were supplied in Malign Sorcery or now in Forbidden Power. So those are the first three that I think arguably have a place in competitive play. Now, there's only two more that I want to talk about. They're from Forbidden Power. I don't mind them. I won't say I don't mind them, but for me, they didn't jump out as well balanced, I guess, for competitive play. And just on the whole, what was your assessment of the three that I think are better and the two that I think are a little bit worse?
yeah. Overall, I'm starting to think that I would certainly include them in a tournament pack.
Mm,
And but again, I think the discussion around where you where in the tournament you put them would
mm.
be a big
And that for
uh,
me is the big question, right? And that's where I am not smart enough to be a TO. I take my hat off to people like yourself and Clint and all those remarkable humans around the world who run events, because you do have a lot of work to do. And Dassar is right in saying in this mission this is a mission that very much suits the Alpha Strike, whereas the other two we've looked at, I think they don't. It's not that they don't suit the Alpha Strike, but they offer a win ability for armies that don't win on turn one. Um, the last two that we'll have a look at. So the second to last is a mission called. This is back from Forbidden Power, and it's called Guardian Spirits. Now, Guardian Spirits is a bit of an interesting one. It's a 12-inch deployment again, so 12 inches outside of enemy territory, 12 inches within yours. And I just want you to imagine that across each of the 9-inch lines in No Man's Land is a magical line. Now, as you like at the start of the battle, what you do is you place an objective. They say in the book a time worn ruin, which is part of the new scenery kit, which looks fucking sexy, I might add. But there's each player deploys 5 along that line. They all have to be wholly within 9 inches of the horizontal center line, so 9 inches either side, and then 6 inches from another ruin. So basically, each side of the battlefield has 5 objectives in it, somewhere within 9 inches of that line and 6 inches from other objectives. So you've got 10 inches on it. uh, which for me I think is interesting. It's the biggest number of objectives we've ever seen. However, not all of them are worth points. So as you play the battle, um, at the end of your movement phase, so player movement phase, you roll a dice for each rune that you have within 3 inches of a hero, and you add one if that hero is a priest, right? And one for artifacts of power. So I think the best you can get is a 4 up. On a 6 or more, it becomes an objective for the rest of the battle, and you're then playing over that objective. So the reason I kind of like it is because we have seen a lot of missions that are about artifacts of power and wizards. So for some, as someone who plays an army that has priests but not wizards, I always have to ally in wizards to have a shot. I wouldn't mind seeing this one start to sneak in to reward those armies that don't have magic but do have priests, like Fire Slayers, Dispossessed, Khorne, those armies that sit on that side. Because it means that if you had, say, you were playing not Duality Death, Relocation Orb, or Places of Arcane Power, which really suit wizards and artifact holders, you also have one that suits priests and artifact holders. And I find that most armies that don't have one will have the other. Andy, what were your thoughts looking at this mission?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. And actually, I was going to ask you, how you see people coming up to tournaments with things like corn, and maybe dwarves that don't have heroes that are wizards. You're at a disadvantage if somebody places of arcane power in the tournament. I've played that scenario a couple of times with my corn list. I managed to shit kick my opponent, but I lost because I couldn't.
You only had a couple of models that could score objectives, so competitively you were at a disadvantage. Which you never hear Sylvaneth or Legions of Nagash players complaining about those missions because they're always great. So I would argue, like this mission, there's obviously the random nature of where those objectives show up because you need a 6 to find them if you don't have a priest or an artifact of power nearby. But I like that there's 10 objectives and you only need to have a hero within 3. So potentially a hero with a big enough base could be searching 2 a turn. And by the end of it, there's an element of random, but it's not as massive as the other one. And let's be honest, we play a dice game. If you want to take luck and chance out of it completely, play chess. If you want a bit of randomness, if you want a bit of chance, then you're playing War Dollies, you're playing Age of Sigmar. So yeah, I like it. I don't think it's as good because it does still suit an army with heroes or with a specific set of things. Like Beastclaw Raiders still can't play this mission without allies. They might have heroes with big bases that could potentially be in range of 3 or 4 of the objectives, sure, but they don't have priests, they don't have wizards unless they ally them in. So unless someone correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Huskards on Thunder Tusks are priests. So I like it for the fact that it throws another keyword in there, but I have a problem with it in the same way that I don't like Places of Arcane Power or Relocating Orb, that armies with access to multiple wizards and easy battalions for extra artifacts definitely have an advantage. As a TO, if you were looking at putting this in your pack, I guess what would your considerations be? What would you be worried about?
Well, in some ways, this resembles Starstrike a bit because you score more points.
Oh, yes. Sorry, I didn't mention that either. Each of those objectives that's revealed on a 6 or more is worth the battle round number of points. So you could potentially roll 3 sixes in battle round 5 and score 15 points off of objectives.
Yeah, so I don't know. Like that's kind of hard. I mean, I would be tempted early, like maybe like game one.
Yeah. If you were going to include it, it'd be a
And
nice early one for people.
yeah, but I mean, I would definitely make players aware of this being in the tournament.
Like flag it as
Month.
like be aware of this game.
Yeah, because I feel like this is one that people would need to practice.
Mm.
Um, these are, I mean, I agree. There's a random nature to it, but which is fun.
Yeah.
That's totally fun. That you could potentially um, create a situation where five objectives appear in turn one or something,
Yeah, and you're
and
planning it out. Sorry, Blaze Be Mad in the chat saying it should just be heroes, not wizards or priests. I do agree with you. This one, though, it is heroes. All heroes get to roll to discover whether one of the 10 objectives is worth any points. But if you're a priest, you get to add one to it. And if you have an artifact of power, you get to add one to it. So, unlike Places of Arcane Power, all heroes are worth it in this one. Just priests and models with artifacts are worth slightly more. I just want to flag that in case I didn't explain it clearly at the start. Heroes, artifacts of power, priests are what you need for this one. But yeah, I agree. I think it's good. I think it's fun. I think there's a little bit of tactical element in placing your objectives, but I don't know if when you need to roll so high for them to be worth it. If it was like there were 6 on each side of the board, or there were 5 on each side of the board, and you rolled a dice at the top of each battle round, and you allocated them 1 to 5, and on that dice roll, one of them suddenly became an objective on each side, or on a 6 you got to choose. That for me might make it slightly more competitive because you're then guaranteeing that each side of the board is having at least one objective a turn until they're all filled up. Whereas the fact that you have to search for them is a bit more narrative. And again, there's nothing wrong with narrative. We're just talking competitive tournament play here. That's why I've got TO Extraordinaire Andy on the line. I think the fact that it's random as to whether you find them or not. Like, you could have a priest with an artifact of power left next to an objective all game and never reveal it if you roll bad. So that's where I kind of feel this one falls down, is that fact that it can fuck you up with no chance of going right. Andy, man, any last comments on this one before we move on to the last battle plan?
Oh, yeah. I'm just sort of thinking maybe like what I would do tactically.
Mm-hmm.
On probably I would put a bunch of these tokens, the time worn rune tokens, near like as close as they can be,
Mm.
and I would like push my army up, surround them, and then get multiple priests near those, and then just hope that you can roll
Roll well.
high enough, and all of a sudden you've got objectives that you're controlling.
Yeah,
That's
the one the one thing that I like about this battle plan, and that I'll remind everyone who's watching, is that line, the objective line, is 9 inches from opponent's territory, and you get to set up 5 of your objectives in your territory wholly within 9 inches of that line. Meaning that you can put, if you play Khorne and you know you want to get up in your opponent's face turn 1, you can put all 5 of your objectives right on the center line. Meaning that even if your opponent sets their objectives 9 inches back, you don't have to waste models at the back of the board controlling objectives. So I do like it for that reason. I like it that there's a bit of tactical flexibility in how you deploy your objectives, because it can play into your battle plan. Like, if you want to do a refused flank, you can pull them over to one side. I do like that. I think that's really cool. But yeah, I think the problem for it is mostly found in that space that you still have to roll to find the objectives. And that's always going to be a bigger element of chance than I think it should be. But yeah, like you say, if you were to put it in a player's pack, you'd probably put it early, like the first game or something.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, just because, again, if you got to think about what's happening early in the tournament, you have, sort of mismatches in player ability. So, hopefully, what you're ideally is that the strong players are, kind of moving up. So we'll, know how to win this scenario. No matter what happens, I
Yeah,
guess, with the luck,
and I think that's
which is kind
an
of that.
interesting thing. Like, we often talk about the last game in a scenario pack. So for those of you who haven't played a competitive event, I recommend it. I think they're amazing. They're really fun. You learn a lot. Even if you don't necessarily feel like you're a competitive gamer, just go out there to play 5 fun games of War Dollies and have a good time. But the conversation a lot of the time is about what is game 5 or what is game 4 and game 5, because they're the last games that most of the time you play. So usually the reason we have those discussions is because you're talking about the tiny top percentage of the tournament who will win the tournament based on their winning game 5, so winning 5 full games and taking out the victory. Now, the reason that's so important is you want to try to make sure your 5th game is really balanced and really tactical, but isn't easily over on some random weird dice roll. Now, this one, because you've got to find your objectives, there's a lot left to chance, which means as a final game, it's a bad one. But as an early game at the start, when players who maybe should be doing well can play well at it, it kind of fits in, because you basically want to start with nice open-ended gameplay that, as the course of the tournament proceeds, leads to really tight tactical, forgiveless decision-making gameplay. And by that I mean that if you make a mistake, your opponent can capitalize on it. And I think this is a mission that lends itself very much to early tournament play as opposed to late tournament play. But Blaze Be Mad chiming in, and Andy, as a death player, I assume this upsets you, what Flesh Eater Courts can do. Saying that there was an event where someone brought 2,500 points of list, and every game just got to choose which 500 points to add, which is, it gives you that flexibility. So like that's where you have like a sideboard. Effectively, you have your list and you have a selective sideboard that you get to add to the extra 500 points of your army to tailor to the mission, which I think is interesting, but it does definitely advantage those who have a bit more money and can just buy everything in their army. Personally, that's the reason I don't love Flesh Eater Courts, because they can just choose what else to add. So they're like, oh, well, it's a bodies mission, I'll get another body on. It's a wizard mission, I'll summon another spellcaster. It's like those kind of things. So I don't love Flesh Eater Courts for how versatile their summoning is and how undefeatable it is, because you can't really stop it. Flesh Eater Courts are fucked, right, Andy? As a Legion of Gash player, Flesh Eater Courts are fucked?
Yeah, although I mean,
good. I'm glad you agree with me.
I still want to, against Flesh Eater Courts. Doesn't seem to be many people that have now a local meta here, so
so it's a safe space.
And I'm more getting even, to be honest. The Vortex. I feel like I want to get a T-shirt that says like "fuck Skaven Vortex," you know?
Yeah, mate. The Rat Trap is just something else. The Skaven Vortex, for those who haven't had the displeasure of playing against it, will surprise you with how fucking awful it is. And all I can say is, unless you're Zench and you're planning around letting your opponents cast spells, stop the Vortex at all costs, because it will ruin your goddamn day. And I can say that unequivocally. I've yet to meet anyone who is a fan of the Vortex that isn't casting it at their opponents. Dad Hammer, I agree with you as well. Rob has a pretty decent idea about doing events that only choose one type of mission. So all the missions that advantage heroes or spellcasters, do an entire tournament that is all about those. It would definitely be a good thing. LOV asking if I've played against the Vortex yet. I have. I've played against it 3 times. The 2 of those times I dispelled it before it could get cast. The first and second time it got out on the third time, but by then it was too late. And one of the times they got it off first turn, and I just ignored it by rolling a 5 up on my Dwarven banners. The one good thing about Dispossessed is we ignore magic very well. So we've got a 1 in 3 chance of stopping it from affecting us, and we've got a pretty decent chance of dispelling it. However, if it does go off and they get it up, they will just absolutely rinse you. So it is it's a ridiculously underpriced spell. People complained, right, about the Everblaze Comet. Andy, fair enough that when the Everblaze Comet came out, people were like, it is way too powerful for only 100 points. We may have dropped just there. Um, but the Everblaze Comet for 100 points, it was disappointing, right? Like how good it was compared to all of the other endless spells. And then when the Rat Trap came out, the Vortex, it was something fucking else. It was hideous, it was terrifying, and it just, yeah, it's not godly. Skaven can go and eat a sack of dicks as far as I'm concerned with that one. I love it when I see a Skaven list that doesn't have it because I get excited. I'm like, yes, you're doing something else other than that really awesome spell that we use to fuck up our opponents all the time. And yeah, and some games it can get cast and it just ends the game turn one, and your opponent's like, well, that's a good first turn. Game over. I'll shake your hand and we'll go to the bar. Oh yeah, LOV did it first turn in the middle of the board, and that was pretty much game over. I feel it. I see it happening. It does. Jimmy 1080, 100 points better than Jimmy 980. Yeah, it is just ridiculous.
Yeah, I went up against it as I said with my corn playing Places of Arcane Power, and so basically trying to get my heroes to actives, the heroes that have the artifacts. The advantage because I can't, was it, you can't run, and it's just, yeah, it's just really disheartening to movement phase dictated by.
Yeah, but see, I wouldn't actually mind the spell. I think that spell is fairly costed at 150 or slightly more points. I think it's a little bit unfairly costed as it is. It's just a little bit too cheap. I don't mind what it does. I think it's too cheap and it shouldn't go off twice in the turn it's cast. Because that's the thing that's fucked, right? If your opponent gets it off, they get the benefit of doing D3 mortal wounds to you in their hero phase and then D3 mortal wounds to you in their movement phase. It should only be once. Much like the Comet, much like all of it. It's the fact that it does it twice. So if you get it off, you're like, oh, pretty good chance of doing 2d3 mortal wounds. I'll take off most 5 wound, 4 wound characters are gone. And yeah, Jimmy 1080, yeah, twice is what's fucked. In fact, it's an argument I don't need to have. I feel like the chat's in with me. Twice is just ungodly and not very friendly. Anyway, that's the end of the conversation about Guardian Spirits. We have one last battle plan to discuss, and it's a corkscrew one. It's an interesting deployment. Now, this one I'm actually quite interested in because at first glance, I didn't love this final battle plan. I thought it was a bit too complex, a bit too confusing, and kind of unnecessary. But the more I look at it, the more I won't lie, I'm kind of starting to like it. So I'd like to get your opinion, Andy, and the chat's opinion, Andy, on ebb and flow. Now, this is the one of the final battle plans. And this is one of the ones that I'm really interested in. Sorry, just before we get onto the mission, Verigo saying that, oh yeah, if it's going off twice, then it should just be a straight 1 mortal wound as opposed to D3. Yeah, I support that. Hey Woe, who is just a goddamn legend, saying Evocators are fine, Stormcast are fine. Yeah. I think Hey Woe, you're pretty much bang on the money there. I think the reason that you're right though is because when Stormcast came out, Sequitors and things compared to the rest of the meta were a bit cheap. But as we have it now, I actually think, and also they were new, right? People were getting their fucking poo pushed in left, right, and center and didn't appreciate that it was because they just hadn't learnt how to counter it yet. Now they're quite balanced. They're really good. They were new, and at the time they seemed unbalanced compared to everything. Now we look back on it and we go, actually, they kind of nailed that battle tome. They just need to lower the points on things like Vanguard and Liberators just a little bit, because Andy, I'm going to guess that you haven't played against Liberators or Vanguard in a very long time.
No, and I don't think I ever really played against Vanguard. Vegas. What year that would have been? I think it would have been 2017, the heyday of the Vanguard. I didn't play against it, but I know that a friend of mine did, and it was good. It was really good.
Yeah, I think back in the day they were all about it, but I don't think I've played against someone using Liberators since, because for 20 points extra, Sequitors are so much better. Um, and that's I agree. Haywo, I completely agree. They need drops. Liberators now in the scope of the game aren't worth 100 points for what they do. Um, I would argue that Dwarf Warriors are better than them for 80 points for 10 wounds, and I will fight anyone who disagrees with me. Or for 100 points, I would get 10 Longbeards, which any day are infinitely better than Sequitors. They're a 4-up rerollable armor save. They've got their grumbles. They're 3s rerolling 1s to hit you, 3s rerolling 1s to hurt you. Longbeards for 100 points are a better choice than Sequitors. And so, not Sequitors, sorry, Liberators. So yeah, the Liberators and a lot of that stuff, the old school Stormcast need a points drop. No, mate, and don't apologize. This show is about getting derailed. Freaking the other shows on the Honest Wargamer are all about sticking to facts. Andy, this show you've been listening to a while. You've been coming on with me for a while. It's pretty much about tangents, right? We're all about tangents.
Yeah, totally. And I'm like, 3 drinks in now, and
Yeah,
this conversation is good with me.
yeah, mate. We've a few drinks in each. Neither of us should be behind the wheel of this show, but I am, and it's a terrible life choice. But Blitz just finally joined the chat, so we'll have to start the entire show over again. Gnome's been saying that you use Liberators only because they're painted, which I think is pretty much the reason most people use Liberators. I don't know that Ballistas maybe could do with a slight points increase. I don't know that they need too much, because ultimately they're still only Rend 1 and they're only D6 hits. So anyway, there's a lot to unpack there. That is for greater minds than me to deal with. And I put this photo up of Ebb and Flow about 5 minutes ago and we haven't discussed it yet. So that's what we're going to talk about. Now, Ebb and Flow, the final battle plan from Forbidden Power that we want to talk about. Vanilla asking if we can nerf magical pickaxes, and you can fuck right off. Dispossessed don't need nerfs. We're fine exactly as we are. Thank you very much. But Ebb and Flow, now again, I did see earlier in the chat people asking whether it's symmetrical. It is a symmetrical thing. I am just unfortunately not great at the design of stuff. Being corrected, Celestial Ballistas are Rend 2. But my point being, they're D6 hits, so you could roll a 1, you could roll a whatever. I don't. They're powerful in unison, but how do you point someone that has 3 of them compared to one of them is hard, and that's where I think things are tricky. But Ebb and Flow, we're talking about Ebb and Flow. So deployment is you're 9 inches from your opponent's territory, so a little bit similar to that other one from the General's Handbook that I fucking hate because deployment takes forever. Now, this is where things get a little bit interesting. And this is another one that I'll read out just to make sure it's nice and clear. At the start of each player's turn, the opposing player, so at the start of the blue player's turn, the red player chooses one of their objectives to be the primary objective. So if you're the blue player and it's your turn, the red player gets to choose one of their objectives. That objective is worth 5 victory points for that turn only to you. So it's kind of a toughie. I find it interesting. It's not, compared to some of the other battle plans that we've looked at this evening, I don't find it as balanced, but I find it quite interesting in that you are making a decision objectively on objective play at the top of your opponent's turn. Now, I should say, unless I misread something, all objectives are only worth 1 point except for the one that you choose for your opponent is worth 5. Yes, 1 victory point. Yeah, so I think it's a really interesting combo. Andy, first impressions on this battle plan. What are you feeling?
It's funny now that you've kind of read that through again, because I've read that statement probably 5 times now.
Mm-hmm.
Now I get what this is all about. Basically, it's like, okay, it's my opponent's turn. Which of my objectives hold for sure. So I'm going to pick, this one that I hold and is, never going to get taken. And because, if my opponent takes that, they're going to get 5 points, which is like pretty significant.
Mm.
And,
Mm.
when it's my turn, they're going to pick one of theirs, which is going to be worth 5 to me. So I'm going to want to commit to see if I can just take that objective in that one turn. So
Mm.
I think this one will reward armies that are quick.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm thinking of like Deepkin, are pretty fast.
Mm.
So armies that can get around the board and put some damage on like late game. Because I mean, scoring 5 points versus scoring like a couple is big.
But remember, like what we're talking about is the odds are you're scoring the 3 from your objective too. So I almost the reason I like it is because and I just want you know what I'm going to go over it again just so that anyone listening who can't see it or anyone watching who missed it the first time really gets it clear because it's really the important key element to this battle plan. Now in the chat, people saying that the deployment, like the zigzaggy deployment, is fucked. I agree with you. It increases game time. It's more complex. It's really frustrating. So I'm right there with you. It should be through the middle or through the side. I don't care. However, but I do really think that this battle plan is very much supports a combo play style, like someone who can play defensively and offensively. Now, the thing that I think is really interesting tactically is in your opponent's turn, choosing which objective is worth 5 victory points. Now, do you potentially choose the one that you know you're never going to go away, which I think is the safest one, the one you've got the best defense around, to try and bait your opponent into throwing shit against it? Or do you give them an option of one that is relatively lightly defended, but that you can take advantage of if they play for? So I
What do you
what
like, as in like bait them into exposing themselves?
Yeah, so let's say I'm the red player, right? And turn my opponent's turn 1, I have I have got a really good castle built around the northeasternmost objective. So the one in the middle of the board for me in my deployment zone. Maybe potentially I say that the middle objective is worth 5 points to offer my opponent that really, really tasty bait of going 8 points up turn 1, right? 5 points for that objective, 3 points for theirs. It's a huge goddamn lead. But to do it, I know they're going to have to put a bunch of units in there to clear it and capture that objective that I can then potentially hurt really badly. It offers me a balance between, it lets me tempt my opponent more. And I kind of like that because potentially I could take advantage of their positioning to get them out. In the same way that when we looked at, sorry, I'll flick back to it super quickly so that we can have a look. When we looked at Sorcerer's Streams, the one where you get to, if you go second in the battle round, remove an objective off the table, I feel like it also kind of ties back quite well into that. Now, I don't necessarily think that this is as good as that one, but I think this one requires a lot of tactical thinking on both players' part, and that for me is the sign of a really good battle plan. I guess, Andy, if you were playing this, given that you play Legions of Nagash, which is currently one of the most competitive armies in the game, and Khorne, which is not currently one of the most competitive, but do statistically do quite well at tournaments, would you be excited to see this battle plan in it?
I would, and a thought that I'm now having about a lot of these battle plans that you've kind of got us to talk about tonight is, you know, um, I've been reading over them since about 5:30 today. I think that they are battle plans that people would need to read over because as an educator, you know me to think that that people are not stupid, but sometimes people can be stupid and not kind of gather exactly what's going
Mm,
on in the mission. And in general, this is another one where people would have to really understand the mechanics of what's happening
mm,
in terms of really the value of the objectives are changing every turn.
mm. Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
it's hard, and also they're not changing randomly. They're changing to your opponent's whim, which I kind of like because
yes.
they could potentially play you around on this one. So I like it. The thing I think for me that puts me off this one is the deployment map. If that was a bit different, I don't think I'd mind it as much. But Cool Bunny saying that you'd like to see it at a 21, 2, or 3. I agree. The objective play of this mission, I would love to see. The deployment map can fuck itself right off.
Well,
Unless you're playing on one of Dimensional Cascades maps that make life and the deployment phase so much faster. Bless you, holiest amongst thou, who help us with deployment. I feel like this map is very hard to deploy to. You almost need to give an extra 15 minutes to half an hour to the round that plays this mission.
I would be happy putting this as like as a round
Mm-hmm.
three,
Yep.
as long as I was sure that everybody coming to the tournament understands how it works.
And that's I think the hard thing is that you've got people who are relatively new, right? So you don't necessarily want to give them too many weird new battle plans. Um, to me, I personally like to see new stuff, but that's because I've been going to tournaments for a while. I want to think differently. Um, but I guess if we were to wrap it all up after all of this, we've spoken about 5 battle plans, 2 of which I feel like sell themselves quite well. I feel like I've sold them quite well to you, Andy, and I feel like I've sold them quite well to you in the chat. And those 2 were the first 2 that we looked at, which were this one, Penumbral Domain, which if you want to check out the thing, you can just watch this show back. We'll be finishing up in the next couple of minutes. You can go and watch the replay. Catch that. It was the first one we looked at. Now, this one's 4 objectives, and each turn, 2 of those objectives are worth double points. 2 objectives are worth 1, 2 are worth 2, and they're always on either the 2 on the vertical axis or 2 on the horizontal axis. So it'll never favor one side of the board over the other, which is quite nice and balanced. Andy, you liked that one. You gave it a 9 out of 10. Looking back on it compared to the other ones that we've spoken about this evening, how do you feel about it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm sold on that one.
Me too. I think it's great. The second one that we looked at this one is my personal favorite. For what it's worth, the Sorcerer's Streams. This one, the objectives are worth 1. They're 18 inches away. You can see on the deployment map there. But each priority, the player who goes second gets to remove 1 objective from the map. We're not going to go over why I think that's an amazing tactical thing, because I already just about gave it a blowjob telling it about how special and wonderful this mission is and how I want to meet the person who designed it and just cuddle them and tell them that I love them, and they gave me something beautiful in War Dollies. Andy, you liked this one as well. I think this was probably your favorite of the night.
Yeah, I think it was. As it's a bunch of objectives that are all close together, and it forces people to think about how they want to start the game. Do they want to go hard, or do they want to like wait and see, and kind of play late game? So yeah, and just the fact that it could be a really good kind of early mission, maybe.
I think, to be honest, I think this one lends itself to anywhere in a player's pack, in a tournament pack. And that is the sign of a fantastic mission. It could be first, it could be last, it could be in the middle, it could be back. Gnome's Bane saying that he thinks this one's the MVP of the Battle Plan pack. I agree. Arguably that. And yeah, we've looked at the other ones. We've had a chat about them. I don't mind Ebb and Flow. I think it's okay. But I think compared to these 2, if I was trying to pick 2 to add to the tournament packs around the world to replace some of the tired old missions we see every time, it would be these two, because one of them has an element of random chance to it, but it's entirely about tactical competitive play, and the second one has an element of chance to it where both players get an advantage at the priority roll, whether you go first or second. I think it's awesome. Andy, any last thoughts for you on these?
And actually, I just want to say that playing some games recently where my opponent has won the priority roll and given me the turn. Um, and those are good players that I've been playing against. Where they're realizing that is to if you've really planned well and not left yourself exposed, where there are advantages to going second, and so it makes the game way more tactical. Where models in a certain turn, you're thinking about the next turn as well, which is
Yeah, where you're thinking about where your opponent's going to move, what you're going to do to play on it, and yeah, I think that for me is the step between someone who's played a few tournaments and someone who's played a lot of tournaments. Because once you do play a bunch of them, you're thinking about in your turn, you're planning for losing the next priority roll. And you're asking what will happen to me if my opponent takes it? What will I do if I win it? And I think that these are battle plans. They don't necessarily reward one way or the other, but they ask you to think about it. And I think that is just what we're waiting for in War Dollies. And if nothing else, like, fuck off the endless spells. Haven't even spoken about them. If you want to see people talk about them, go and watch the earlier show from today with Rob and Nathan and all that crew. They're much smarter with that stuff than I am. All I wanted to talk about were the missions, because for me, those are the ones that I see having the biggest impact on the game potentially and on the meta competitively. Andy, there's one last thing that I'd like to round out tonight's show with. But before that, do you have any last words on all of the missions, on the Forbidden Power stuff and everything that we've looked at this evening?
Well, I mean, I think that I really appreciate the fact that you kind of brought this up as a topic today, because I mean, I think you're right that heading into tournaments over the summer, I'm kind of wondering what I'm going to face. I've signed up for T Shift, which is the August long weekend in Bellevue, and I'm wondering, like, okay, what missions am I going to play there?
Yeah, what am I going to have to face? Haywo, commenting what we were chatting about earlier. If you're playing Beast Raiders, what will I do if I lose any priority roll ever? Pretty much lose. And you are right. But I like that, like, for me, I was saying earlier that I always ask myself one of two things, which is, first of all, can low mobility armies and low unit armies win this game? And games that have like 6 objectives in the middle of each battle tile, realm of battle tile, like 20, 12, and 12, like Beast Claw Raiders with low unit drops, are never going to be able to do it. Or does this reward players who take priority? Whereas Beast Claw Raiders, for the first time, I actually think that the Penumbral mission, and especially Sorcerer's Streams, they're in with a shot, because there's rewards to both sides for them. So I hope that maybe it sees, if either or both of those start to sneak into packs, we might see a little bit. Oh my gosh, Haywo, 11 months. We've had our first hobby baby. Did you know that? 9 months. Our first hobby baby's already growing up. I'm pretty sure I saw it shitting on the rug just before. And we're 4 months into our second hobby baby. I don't know what we should name our first hobby baby. I feel like it should be something to do with yourselves. So if you have any ideas for what our first hobby baby should be called, that's fine. But our second hobby baby, I'd like to call Stephen when it finally arrives. If it's a boy, Stevette. If it's a girl. LLV saying dispossessed don't have the luxury of giving priority away. I also agree. I very rarely have that luxury unless I play hard for it. All right, so the last thing I want to chat about, and Andy, I am very sorry. I didn't plan, I didn't prep you for this, We didn't talk about it at all this afternoon because I figured that it'd be much more interesting, and I'll give you a chance to respond. I got a weird question from someone that I was drunkenly playing against a little while back, and I thought that I'd throw it to yourself and to the chat. Um, and this was, and this is what I'd like to throw out there. And let's just, we're going to remove gender from it entirely because we're the edgy show that we are. And the question that I'd like to ask of everyone is, if you were to wake up after a blackout night drunk evening next to one model from any unit of Age of Sigmar, which would be the best to wake up next to and which would be the worst? So if you're in the chat, I want you to write the best, like the unit that you'd be stoked to wake up next to, and then a slash, and then the unit that you would find the worst to wake up next to. Now, Andy, I'll give you a moment to come out with your best and worst, and I'll give you my best and worst. Blitz responding immediately saying Marathi to both, which I think is fantastic. Yeah, definitely. Like if you wake up next to Oracle Marathi, you're pretty stoked. If you wake up next to Sleeper Marathi, you are the weird snake version. You're in a lot of trouble. Hey, whoa, Keeper of Secrets both ways. That's fantastic. Joel saying you would be stoked to wake up next to Alariel and really upset to wake up next to a Great Unclean One. I'm going to float it to you, though, that if you woke up next to Alariel, you're probably covered in the beetles that make up that gigantic beetle of her, which is good. Yeah. Slambo, Virago would love to wake up next to Slambo, the OG Chaos Warrior, which I think is very good, and would hate to wake up next to Drasha. 100% yes, because there'd be no pleasing her, right? Like, you'd take her out to dinner and she'd be shitty with you no matter what you did. You'd buy her everything on the menu. She'd be pissed off because you didn't open the car door, or then she'd be upset because you did open the car door and she's like, I could open it up myself because of, and again, I'm not being like sexist there. She has a rule where she's just always upset about something that's in her War Scroll profile. Don't at me. Andy, before I go back to the chat, talk to me. What are yours?
Well, for the one I'd like to wake up to next to, I immediately went to Slanesh, and I was thinking about a game I had against Slanesh. Mm-hmm. I was playing in the basement of my house, and at the time, I think my daughter was like 2 or 3 years old, and I think I had her on my knee, and I was kind of bouncing her to sort of like keep her happy while I played Warhammer. Yep. On the tabletop is my opponent's beautifully painted Slanesh army, which includes lots of boobs and whips and everything. My partner at the time, now my ex, walking in and the guy having to explain why his army was so rude. But
look, let's just say army not safe for work, basically, of the old stool Slanesh army, like the Juan Diaz sculpts and everything like that. Not safe for work by any stretch of the imagination.
But I think, having considered all that, I would have to go with Alariel because I just, that model, sexy, it's just beautiful. And I would not want to wake up. Yeah, I mean, I think Dryker, because
there'd be no pleasing her, right?
Oh, I mean, I remember with an ex-girlfriend explaining Dryker's rules, and it wasn't a very sort of good conversation, because as you say, it's sort of some things a little too close to the chest, I
mean, look, I will be completely honest with you. When I'm in a bad mood, you can do nothing to make me happy. You could rock up with an entire pizza and a bottle of whiskey, like fine $200 whiskey, that you're like, here, I just want you to eat this pizza and drink this whiskey, and I just want you to be happy again, and I wouldn't be. So sometimes, and I put it to you in the chat, we are all Drycher. We all have those moments. I think the thing that we can all agree on is that when they come and you are not the person who is grumpy, like you are the person on the other side of it, they are mortally terrifying because you know that there's no right answer, there's nothing you can do, and you're in a shit mix of trouble no matter what happens. So okay, I'll take that. So Alariel is your up and Drycha is your terrifying one. Um, what else do we have here? LLV saying would love to wake up next to a witch elf and wouldn't love waking up next to a troll hag. Oh no, he's saying that you can then decide the order. Personally, I think the troll hag would be a lovely person to be around because she comes with lots of fish. Alex in the chat saying I'd love to wake up next to a magmadroth. I would struggle snuggle a magmadroth so hard it'd be like a cute little lava puppy and I would love it. Hypno Kraken would like to wake up next to a Troggoth hag, but would not like to wake up next to a Blight King. Yes, but at least the Blight King would, like, I assume, open the door for you and be quite chivalrous, according to the books. Demonettes and Witch Elves featuring, Blaze Be Mad saying, would be a bit sore waking up next to a Bone Grinder Gargant the next morning. The thing I find a little bit concerning is that Blaze Be Mad didn't say whether that was the good one or the bad one. Yeah, I'm not sure, Andy. I don't know how I feel about that. Varago saying that Drycha always has bees. Yeah, she's always got some kind of infestation, which I think isn't good. Salathon, would a skull cannon cuddle? No, it doesn't have arms, so it wouldn't cuddle you. Dimensional Cascade is pretty keen on squigs, and I don't know if that's bestiality or not, but we're not dealing with that in this show. But I would say, I don't know if I would see squigs as a one-night stand hookup. I'd see them more as like that puppy that you drunkenly adopted, and now you've got this like cute slobbering mess that you need to care for the rest of your life. Yep, people liking squigs. A sloppity bile piper. Yeah, I'm feeling that. Would not want to wake up next to one of those. Andy, just the name Sloppity Bile Piper, what kind of an emotional reaction does that give you?
Mostly, yeah. It's kind of I'm feeling like sort of slapping flesh is the sound I'm imagining.
Yeah, and that's like it's not entirely what you want. Okay, Veronica asking, when you wake up, is the other person asleep or awake? They're asleep, but as soon as you move, their eyes flutter open and they wake up. Dimensional Cascade saying that the Troggoth Hag would have something to teach you, which is horrifying but probably true. So I'll tell you mine. I would love to wake up after a one night stand next to a Mutalith Vortex Beast, because it's got like 9 tentacle tongues and a whole lot of weird shit going on, and I feel like it's got a weird warp realm of chaos vortex on its back. So like you would feel and see some shit no human being had ever seen or felt before, and everything afterwards would pale in comparison. So it's tough. But I think that for me, it's the Mutalith Vortex Beast. And I wouldn't like to wake up, and I know this sounds awful to say, but I wouldn't like to wake up next to Brock Grungnisant, the head bloke from the Cadron Overlords, because the reason he's the head bloke from the Cadron Overlords is because he's very selfish and always gets the best for himself, and I don't think that makes for a very giving lover. So if that's what I got to choose, it's a Mutalith Vortex Beast because it gives too much, and a Cadron Overlord Sky Admiral because he gives too little. That would be mine. And it breaks my heart to say it, but we all know it's the truth. LOV saying that with a name like Sloppity Bile Piper, you know he's got some skills. Yeah, potentially. Blaze Be Mad with possibly my favourite quote of the evening saying, I want to wake up next to Archaon so he can call me his ever chosen. Yeah, and you know what? I can think of no better way to end this evening's episode. So thank you so much, Andy, for joining me this evening, mate. As I said, we're always going to end every episode with what I would love to affectionately call shameless plugs. So shameless plug to me. Talk to me about what events you've got coming up, what things you've got that you would like people to know about.
Well, I mean, obviously as I mentioned, the big one is Attack
Mm-hmm.
X. So 14 to 15th in Kamloops.
Mm-hmm.
Here, 25 players. I was playing last year.
And this year
And again,
you're the TO?
the TO, and we're hoping like 30 or more. That
Mm-hmm.
would be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean that's the cool thing
Um,
about Age of Sigmar. Everywhere I look, it's building, and it's freaking awesome, right?
yeah, and I've kind of left it kind of open. I'm just looking at I submitted the tournament pack
Mm-hmm.
like a long time ago, but I've kind of left it open in terms of realm spells and
Mm-hmm.
rules because I wanted to wait until to see what came out. So that's something I'm going to think about is whether I want
Mm.
to having missions tied to kind of realms and having a realm
And abilities
spell
and things like that.
available. Back to
Mm.
I worry about heavy magic heavy armies like another tool
Mm.
that you know the magic uh armies are not going to be able to take advantage of. So anyway,
Yeah, no,
just just
I think
something.
I think that's very worthwhile considering as well, because I know when I played in your last event, West Coast GT, the fact that you stripped it right back and it was none of that, I really enjoyed. Um, and I know that there's been a lot of events that have been very open and inclusive of all the malign sorcery stuff, all of those things. Um, so I think that it's the question TOs have to answer. How much will they include? So yeah, I look forward to it. So T Shift is your next.
Yeah, so I'm playing in T
Mm-hmm.
shift.
And then you're hosting Attack X.
Yeah, yeah. And unless there's anything, please let me know if there's anything happening July and August,
Mm.
kind of Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, mate, just hungry for some more dollies, which is a good way to be. Um, and the last thing that I'll finish on is, as you can see, we've started adding some lovely art here to the ridiculous elevator that I record out of. So if you would like your art featured, and then myself and whoever is my guest to rate your art and give you a score out of 10, it will be stuck on the wall just like the proud mama hen that I am. I'd love to have it added up there, and we'll just keep layering it up until the wall falls down. But thank you so much to everyone who is a subscriber or a Patreon. However you support the show, or however you have supported the show, or will support the show in the future. Thank you so much. Thank you, Andy, for joining me this evening.
Thank you, Dan. It's been a pleasure.
It's always my pleasure. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us in the chat. Wonderful to see you again, and we'll see you again next week. And last but not least, for anyone who's playing the drinking game along with us, cheers. Have a lovely evening of War Dollies. Thank you very much, Andy. Cheers to you.
Bye.